So we'll just wait a couple more minutes, I think.
Lovely to see lots of familiar faces.
Okay, should we make a start? So hello and welcome to the third session of the 2022 Southwest Marine Ecosystem webinar series. My name is Helen Chadwick. I'm one of the project coordinators for Exeter Marine Research Network at the University of Exeter Penryn campus in Cornwall. The University of Exeter has hosted 2 other sessions so far, one on cetaceans and one on climate change. And you can watch both of these back on the Southwest Marine Ecosystems YouTube channel if you missed them. And this one will be recorded and uploaded there as well. There's several more sessions to come, hosted by our institutional partners at Plymouth University and the Marine Biological Association. Tomorrow, Plymouth University are hosting a webinar on fisheries, and on Friday, the Marine Biological Association are hosting a session on marine and coastal birds. And there are many other sessions to come, covering a broad range of marine topics. To continue the series today, we are joined by 3 brilliant speakers to tell us all about seals in our Southwest Seas. We have quite a packed programme for you today, so we'll have a short break after the first 2 presentations and then continue with the 3 remaining presentations after that. Please post any questions you have in the chat, and that's for any of the speakers, and we'll come to those at the end. So our first speaker today is Sue Sayer. Sue is founder of the Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust and has spent over 20 years observing and monitoring seals on around the southwest coast. She probably knows our seals better than anyone and is going to open our session with a coastal roundup. So over to you, Sue.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen and start my presentation. I can see Helen, so I'm hoping she'll give me the thumbs up if she can see it. Lovely. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We're really excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. I have a big network of people, and I'm just super keen to get round as many and do as much justice to all our volunteers as I possibly can. I do want to say thank you to all our funders, because without our funders we can't effectively help to protect our seals around the southwest. And I also want to thank all of our hubs. All the blue dots on this presentation are photo ID teams of volunteers who survey, record and process data on their patch, sometimes remotely, in order to ID seals. So we have a very extensive network that we're going to hear from today. The volunteers that we have do a variety of roles. Some do them locally on their own patch, some do them digitally and remotely. So we have volunteers in New York and Iceland, for example. And some people fundraise at home, which is also really wonderful. I'm not expecting you to read everything on every slide. There's too much there, if I'm honest. But obviously this is being recorded, so if you did ever want to go back and find out a little bit more about what I was talking about, you can do. You can also sign up for our Southwest newsletters by just clicking a link in this part of the presentation. We send out monthly newsletters that are full of information. Okay, so I want to give you of course my cat has intervened now. I'd like to give you an update about our charity achievements and activities in 2021, which is down to this amazing network of volunteers who really are making a difference for seals. So we did 923 activities in 2021, which is ridiculous. And some of them we actually managed to have a global audience for, which has been our theme for 2021, growing our audience. We had 13,000 plus beneficiaries. We've got lots of followers on social media, so please join us if you haven't already. And we now have an intranet Facebook workplace, which we use for our volunteers to talk to each other. We did lots of things. We did talk a week, for goodness sake, a workshop a fortnight, for example, and lots of other things. But the main thing we do is attend meetings to give seals a voice with other people. This is Rob, who I've seen is on the call today. This was at one of our face-to-face talks. Most of our talks have been online in 2021, but this was Rob with 3 Bays Wildlife Group doing a face-to-face talk for the stakeholder group. Okay, so more importantly about seals, really. In 2021, we had 331 volunteers who sent us surveys. There were 5,000 plus surveys, 330 locations. We did 4 censuses, 10 boat surveys and 8 Lew Island surveys. So as well as doing land-based stuff, we get out on boats sometimes, 12 times a year ideally, to survey repeated transects. And we have 3 repeated transects. The most westerly one is the Caspip, Carracks to St Agnes survey. Then we have a central one, the St Agnes to Trevose survey, and then we have the Polpip survey, which is the easterly one. You can see we've seen some amazing things on a recent survey. This was just one survey, the Polpip survey, the Polzeth one. We processed almost 250,000 photos in 2021 and got over 13,000 IDs, most of which were re-IDs. The maximum we got in a survey was 142, and we had over 100 IDs in 7 surveys. The bit that's special for me, though, is that we had 7 IDs that I met of seals in 2000 and 4 from 2021. So you'll see, hopefully, quite a few of these. They're seal calendars. This is a seal called Pliers, who I first met in 2021. And you can see she's been seen at 6 different sites, which are colour coded. There are years across the top and months down the side in the calendar, and the numbers are the number of IDs. So you can see she used to be seen an awful lot at West Cornwall and now not so much. But we did see her in 2021 at West Cornwall, which was really lovely. West Cornwall is my site. So on average, we saw 84 seals in a survey, with the maximum at one survey being 557. They are 65% adults, and of the adults that we sex, 56% are males. So we have a slightly male dominated numbers wise society in Cornwall around the southwest. We had lots of records of pups, but the important figure there is 36 pupping sites, and pups only represented 1% of all the seals that were seen. We had 2 particularly important mums that I'm going to be telling you about later, Lucky Bunting and Ghost. But the south coast seems to be where pupping is re-expanding to, which is really fantastic. So we've got some recolonisation potentially of pupping sites on the south coast, or maybe they're just new pupping sites, who knows. So thanks to Jeff for this lovely photo of a newborn pup. Common seals. Well, we had 85 records of common seals in 2021. 4 was the maximum at any one time. Key ones, Serena and Ellis, male and a female, which is quite key because we had our very first record of a successfully weaned common pup in Cornwall in 2021, which is fantastic. We were hugely grateful to the operators locally because they didn't put it all over social media, so the pup could successfully wean. And I think Ellis is the father and Serena Lowen is the mother, but we had common seal sightings for 10 locations. However, I put this information together, which is historical sightings of common seals, and you will see that in 2020 we had slightly more sightings of harbour seals in 2020 than we did in 2021. And then the bar graph shows that most of these are on the south coast. So this was Serena Lowen with her pup, which was really fantastic. We were delighted to have a first record for us of a successfully weaned common seal pup. So I'm sure some of you have seen this before. This is now where the southwest links to. So 450 kilometres up to the Isle of Man and 650 kilometres to Holland, which is where Mickey came from, and 4 nations, so England, Wales, Ireland and France. We saw a lot of rescued and rehab seals, which plays into the success of rescuing and rehabbing and releasing in the southwest. However, they only constituted 2% of all the seals seen. Some of them were seen repeatedly, and the great news is we did finally get our paper published about our post-release monitoring. Thank goodness for that. So the seal on the right here is an adult male rehabbed. You can perhaps see his tag, Jenga, who was rehabbed at the RSPCA and came back through the Cornish Seal Sanctuary. This is him beach mastering, so he's being a dominant male at a pupping site. And this was the paper that took a couple of years to get through review, but we finally got there, and a great team effort by everyone. Thank you. We saw quite a lot of entangled seals. 357 surveys had entangled seals. Again, only 2% of all the seals observed. The maximum we saw was 18 entangled seals in a single survey, which is an awful lot. There were a few key ones that I've mentioned and named here, but we had some interesting other case studies. So usually it's lost fishing gear that seals get entangled in, but we've had flying rings, hooked seals, and an unidentified one. So I thought I would show you a couple of those. This is a terribly sad molted pup, multiple hooked in fishing line. So it's a sustainable fishery, but unfortunately for this young seal, it's a very, very nasty experience. Whether that will rip out successfully with those multiple hooks, I don't know, but generally they do rip out, fortunately. So are less life-threatening, although they can be very unpleasant, and I guess you could get an infection. We had 2 flying ringed seals, both of which are now free of their rings, thanks to British Divers Marine Life Rescue, and an unknown reason for this one, splits. And this is a hideous bit of plastic that's entangling one of our seals, who I think is now on the way out. But more of entanglement later. And then finally, disturbance. We had lots of surveys with disturbance from our routine surveys, over, well, almost 1,500 seals affected by serious level 3 disturbance events. Maximum disturbed seals in an event was 79, but it happened a lot. We had over 20 seals seriously disturbed at 6 sites, and we are working really closely to share case studies of these events, not only locally, but with the Welsh Coastal and Wildlife Rural Affairs Crime Police Team and the National Marine Mammal Disturbance Partnership run by Natural England. And we can feed in case studies. So the top photo shows before, the bottom photo shows after, and the middle photos show what caused the disturbance, which was a single kayaker causing a multiple disturbance, 12 seals down to 2. And the key thing to remember about this data is that all the impacts are cumulative. They don't just happen in isolation. And Septimus is our seal skeleton, who appears in this new book that came out in 2021 by Mary Colwell, Beak, Tooth and Claw, Exploring Our Relationship with Predators in the UK. And she used Septimus as an example of cumulative impacts. Why do we do all that? So we can input into consultations. We did 31 in 2021, and also so we can do conservation actions. There were 4 slides about conservation actions that I could have shared with you. There are just lots of them, and I'm not going to go through them all. Okay, so this is the Southwest Roundup that is the most interesting bit. So I'm going to start at the top with Northwest Wales, where we have got a new contact, the Seal Welfare Organisation, and a couple of highlights from them was we got the first North Devon, Northwest Wales link, which is this seal, so that was really exciting, and also a tagged female having a pup. So not only did Jenga do beach mastering, but we've got tagged females pupping, so behaving normally and successfully. Sadly, another sad sight is this. We've no idea what this plastic noose is around this female, but she's been seen multiple times in Northwest Wales. On through the Gower then, which is obviously Gareth's patch. They survey 1 sensitive seal site. They've got 139 seals in their catalogue. They've had 1 common seal pup that was assessed and re-released by British Divers Marine Life Rescue, 5 molted grey seal pups that were attended, 5 dead seals, and links to North Devon, which was very exciting. So this is the Gower and North Devon link that I just mentioned, which is fab. This is the beautiful haul-out site that Gareth gets to survey. It's just gorgeous, but this was just before a disturbance incident, and it shows that there were no seals left after the arrival of jet ski and a rib. On to North Devon, to Lundy then. We've had relatively few photos from Lundy, but then we've had the warden leave and a new one appointed, so we're looking forward to continuing to work with them in the future. But we had a North Devon to the Isle of Man link, so that was extremely exciting with this tagged seal. And then this very sad sight, which is a molted pup, this time not in monofilament, but in some sort of packing band, potentially around its neck. So any looped item, the key message is to make sure you cut them before you dispose of them. On to North Devon, which is a mainland site, mostly surveyed between April and September, but Dave Jenkins did an incredible 130 days. It's mostly used by seals in the summer, and 91% of the seals at this site are pregnant adult females who leave in the autumn to go to have their pup somewhere else, and if they return after that, they look thin and tired and emaciated, having transferred a third of their body weight to their pup. It's a beautiful sight. This is a beautiful scene of loads of pregnant females, light and spotty females. But Dave also saw seals playing with boys, which is always a very worrying experience to watch. This is a bit of a recurring theme. I put this in because I love it. Kate Williams, who does all the photo ID at this site, there were 8 seals seen that day, and she identified every single one of them. We don't get 100% IDs very often. We do get adult males visiting the site in North Devon occasionally. Juveniles are very rare, and there are a few entangled seals and tagged seals seen. I put this one in, Kate, as well, because this was incredible. This is the month of June, and these are all the females that Dave and Kate saw in June, plus 1 adult male. And I thought it reinforced very powerfully how female dominated this particular site is. But you can see from the calendars that you've got a lot of seals being seen in the summer and only in the summer. And this is a male. So that was an example of a female calendar. This is an example of a male calendar, just a few sightings and in the summer again. Disturbance does occur at this particular site. The coast path is nearby, and if you get noisy walkers, then they can disturb the seals. Local trip boats are generally very good, leaving the seals as they find them. They're mostly adult seals here, so they will tend to ignore trip boats that they're familiar with. However, kayaks and sups and other small watercraft that are silent can get too close and take the seals by surprise, which shocks them a little bit. Okay, into Cornwall. So at North Cornwall, we have seal activity all year round. It followed the usual pattern in 2021 with offshore rocks in the summer and mainland beaches in the winter. Been a large rockfall, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, on one of the haul out beaches, which has significantly dropped numbers to 1/3 or 1/4 of what we would expect. This is the substantial rockfall that happened, and it looks like there was more to come down because the right hand photo shows the cracks in the cliff at the top. It covered a lot of the haul out and made it very uncomfortable for seals to sit on or lie on. This was an interesting one. However, this is the first sighting since the initial record of this particular seal 4 years ago in 2017. Disturbance is also a problem from commercial and fishing boats, but it's been less so, but we do tackle it with KIFCA, which is fantastic, the Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority. In 2021, we got a new issue about low-flying aircraft, and we are hugely appreciative to the flight staff at RNAS Droz, who allowed us to engage with them very positively and to make a difference. So they are now aware of the site. We just need to keep raising the issue with them, I think, because they get staff changeover quite quickly. And now the team at North Cornwall are monitoring people on the cliff tops with a view to potentially using some static cameras in the future. So this was the Eurocopter, the Dauphin one, operated British International helicopters, who won't be doing that again when they don't need to. So that's fantastic. Another interesting seal ID from North Cornwall was Horse Angel Line by Mike Stevens. This mum was recorded having a pup at North Cornwall in 2021, but we first knew her as a juvie in 2013, and she hasn't had a pup at this site since 2018. So it's really interesting just to see seals that have been absent for quite a long time. You could have assumed were dead, aren't, and they just return after a long absence. This North Cornwall team, though, have been particularly active trying to look at online conservation actions. When people name the site, they're flagging it up to attract people to their business. We've been contacting them with very friendly, helpful, informative messages. And as soon as people realise why mentioning the site by name doesn't help the seals, they've been very, very helpful, and in some cases fundamentally changed their website to allow for that. So it's been great. Okay, on to Trevose. Some of you will know Trevose Head. Hungry Slug was a seal that has been seen there, thanks to Terry and Charlotte for their photos. But this is an interesting one, look. This is an ex-entangled seal, potentially. She's been seen at 5 sites 2021 at Trevose, and she just seems to commute between West Penwith North in the west, much further west, and Trevose, and she likes visiting Trevose by the looks of it between March and May, and has an occasional winter visit. Through the Camel Estuary then, so we're moving down the coast further west. Photos from the public continue to delight us, and Alice sent the first photos she'd ever taken of a seal, because it was the first one she'd ever seen in the wild, and look what we were able to tell her in return. This seal is a regular at this site at the Camel in the summer, and she's also been seen at Petunia. So Alice got a great story from her photos. Emma, who processes a lot of photos in the Camel, who processes a lot of photos in St Austell Bay, this is her patch. So she routinely picks up detritus. And I know this is not about seals, but it's related to seals. We support people and their businesses. We want people to enjoy seals. We also want them to enjoy the coast, but we need to raise awareness of marine debris. So Emma sent this in. Obviously, parties on the beach are an issue, and also marine stuff. So we just need to keep raising the issue that this is something we need to take action on. And she also raised the issue, which is always a dilemma, about non-native species and marine debris. Goose barnacles attached to stuff. If they're alive, do you chuck them back in and leave the bottle? Well, we probably would. And they're attached to a rope, which is a risk, and they're dead. We probably wouldn't return them to the sea, and we probably would remove the detritus. But it is a dilemma, an ongoing one. You know, you're going to kill the goose barnacles by getting them out. So Andy Rogers does a lot of work with the Petunia Hub, and he always has photos of the most fantastic behaviour. These two youngsters having a good play on the beach. He routinely records people on the cliff top as well when they're out exercising. These ones were all behaving extremely well behind the barriers, which is fab. And to help with this, Cornwall College Newquay and the Petunia Hub, this is Craig Ashley, have helped set up static cameras for their students to monitor the number of people on the cliff top as an issue with disturbance. This was a lovely example of behaviour. Beautiful female chilling in a rock pool. So she just slept in the rock pool. It's obviously deeper than it looks. And another seal playing with a buoy. The good news is that the link that we have with the local fishers in the area meant that the fisher removed the buoy, so it was no longer a hazard to seals. But you see, this one had managed to get itself completely wrapped up, because seals' panic response is to spin. Okay, so the Seal Alliance have worked very closely producing these signs, and huge thanks to the local National Trust team for putting them up at a site where it was a bit of a challenge, to be fair. And of course, the weather was a challenge on the day they decided to do it. So thanks to Sarah and Mike for that. Andy's also started trying to look at the percentage of time on his surveys where activities are present. And on 2 particular days, I've just put an example in here for you. On the 10th of July, people were present on almost 20% of the time, and on the 31st of July, 25% of the time. So it's a busy site potentially, but there is some good news, which I will share in another talk. And I thought you might like this. So this is an ID'd seal called Tiny Cat, but can you see? He caught a photo of a spider crab going right underneath her nose, snoozing seal's nose. I thought it was a lovely photo. Okay, coming through Newquay. So Charlotte photographed this beauty in Newquay, and she's another one who's not been seen for 3 years, just suddenly appeared back in Newquay. And this one was even more of a shock, although it's a bit of a sneak because it's 2022. I shouldn't have put that in, sorry. But she's been disappeared for 8 years. 8 years! We've never seen her anywhere else. Where on earth has she been for 8 years? Right, moving through to St Agnes and North Cliffs, we had a Meconium pup, which is a seal who's pooed in its amniotic sac probably because the mother was stressed by the dominant male who appeared. But the good news is that despite having a meconium birth, it survived through to successfully wean, which was great. Petunia is an ex-rehab seal that we've been seeing for many, many years. You can see that she spends a lot of time these days at Porthtowan and West Cornwall and Pentire, but she's also been up to North Cornwall, so she's a bit of a mover. Right, onto my site at West Cornwall, which is one of the key sites. This year, James Barnett and the Cornwall Wildlife Trust Marine Strandings Network have had quite a few dead seals, and quite a few of them, well, a lot of dead seals, but quite a few of them have been adult males, which James has managed to post-mortem some of them. Perhaps they're peaking in their deaths after the stress of the mating period, potentially, but we're delighted that the Debs Foundation have agreed to fund some PCB analysis on some of the samples that James has collected, so watch this space. This was one of the sad seals dying in his prime at next taggy, so we know exactly how old he is. He's 12 years old, dying in his prime, and he was would be one of the seals that we would want to investigate PCB levels on. This is a link from West Cornwall, so this is in St Ives Bay, and it's linked up to Lundy, so another big mover. But we're also linked to the south coast. So this stinkweed linked to the Scillies, we link up to Lundy, and we link around to the south coast. So this is a big hub site. Wondered if you'd be interested in seeing this. It's a series of rockfalls that happened on the 8th of March in 2021 in the cave on the beach. But this was just 3 days later. Look how substantially it's changed. And then the sand levels seem to change a lot. The big pieces seem to sink into the sand. It's not just sand buildup, but the big pieces, the sand seems to get undermined below the big pieces. And you can see that what looked hideous to start with has now gone to some nice level playing fields a month later. I also pulled some entanglement data together from this site for Rebecca McIntosh in Australia, the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, to show that we've had over 100 different identified seals at this particular site in the last 4 years, and I think we were up to 120 something, I think I said, for 2021. The seals move offshore in the summer at this site. And I just wanted to mention this seal, which Dan presented about very recently, Gwenver rescue that British Divers Marine Life Rescue did. We were able to ascertain that this seal, who was very small, was actually first seen by us in 2018, but she must have been born at least in 2017. So by the time she was rescued, she was at least 3.5 years old. And this was me trying to work out her size compared to other seals on the haul out. But when she was post-mortem, she was hugely stunted, and the size of her skull was that of a 1-year-old, and her organs were failing as a result of the metabolic and physiological changes that had happened as a result of the entanglement. So she was a really interesting case for British Divers Marine Life Rescue and CSIP as well, Cornwall Cetacean Strandings Investigation Programme. Been working on drone disturbance. We've managed to get some key signs up at the West Cornwall site, which is fab. In July, we had 8 surveys, 28 different seals, some of whom were seen repeatedly, but 20 of the 28 seals were only seen once. So this very much like a service station on a seal motorway with seals passing through. Some of the seals we've known for a very long time, like this beauty, who I've known since 2021. I love Rabbit F. She also happens to be an ex-rehab seal who was rehabbed pre-1999, so she's a great survivor. Some of the pups didn't make it. This was a very sad experience. Dead pup with a mum looking at her dead pup, wondering what's going on. I was devastated when I took that. Some of the pups got lucky and got rescued by a combination of British Divers Marine Life Rescue, Cornish Seal Sanctuary and us. And then I wanted to tell you about Rocket. Rocket was born on this beach in 2007, and he's the first real example we might have of filipatry, maybe the second example, but certainly we've not got very many, of him wanting to come and beach master back at the beach he was born on. However, he's not very good at it, and he's not going to make a great beach master, so I wouldn't hold your breath for that one. Interesting seal here with a flipper stump. Only one I've ever seen like this, but clearly thriving. We've seen him a lot in 2021. And this amazing, think it's an adult female. I'm really not 100% sure. Seal could be an adult male. It's got a very long nose, but either way, it's thriving despite being blind in both eyes. And I wanted to tell you a bit about this love story, but I'm going to cut it really short. Basically, we were hoping that these seals, the male at the top and the female at the bottom, would finally have a bit of a reunion in 2021 at the yellow site. It was not to be. Ghost, who is our best example of site fidelity for pupping, should have come back to her yellow site to have her pup in 2021, and she didn't. She had a pup on the south coast. Maybe she's avoiding this male, or maybe she just didn't make it back in time. But who knew that seals have love stories and that they can be so challenging? And then finally in December at this site, we had 2 seals that we met in 2000, 3 from 2001, 5 from 2002 and 2 from 2003. So that just shows the value of long-term photo ID work. Right, on to St Ives Bay. St Ives Bay, this seal links up West Penwith North, which is down towards Land's End, all the way to Lundy. Another seal playing with a boy. And our amazing volunteers on the site actually removing some of the lost fishing debris. A very pregnant female hauling out at the site at St Ives, followed by, not far away, Slinky Ink having a pup. But sadly, she was leaving her pup and scatting back into the water because she was scared of the tripper boat that was speeding 100 to 200 kilometres offshore. And we say goodbye to Left JX, who was a beachmaster at West Cornwall East. He was found dead in hail. Probably, he's not a very old seal, so he could be another potential early decliner, who knows. Right, on to West Penwith North, where we've been doing some exciting disturbance monitoring with trail cams, thanks to a local volunteer, looking at the presence of people and seals, working in collaboration with Natural England and the National Trust to try and get some mitigation actions into place. So the cameras, there are 3 of them, recording people and recording seals. Work in progress, we'll be able to tell you about next year. This seal was a very interesting returner as well, not seen since 2017 at Lizard South, suddenly reappeared at the West Penwith North site, which was very exciting. We've got a new processor, Susan Timms, who's been working with our Amazement Discovery Ranger Marion, who has now left us, to do the photo ID work there, which is great. This seal, CF1, has only ever been seen at the site and is the most resident female at that site. Whereas this one on the left, elaborate Celtic cross, Marion had said some familiar faces bottling near the winter haul out site. It won't be long before they move on to the site, and sure enough, by December she'd moved on to the site, and then the pups started coming. So this is a photo of one of my favourite seals. She's pupped at my site as well, S31, 2 swirls with her pup. Right, on to West Penwith. So British Divers Marine Life Rescue had to monitor this pup at West Penwith with a load of volunteers. Thank you guys for doing that. You did one up at Camel as well. But this is why it's necessary to monitor the pups, because people just want to get close to take photos. Long ships then. So out at long ships, we can only monitor it from the coastline, but nevertheless, we have volunteers, Malcolm Baker in particular, who tries to photo seals there. And then on to the Isles of Scilly. Sarah from the University of Exeter got this fantastic footage. She was working with Fisheries and Conservation Authority on the seagrass beds, and she got a great video of the seals interacting with her camera. They were looking at species in the seagrass beds. So if you want to look at it, you'll hopefully be able to follow that link and be able to watch it on YouTube. I'm sorry I don't have time to show you. And I'm not going to do anything about this because Dan's going to talk about the walrus, but I couldn't not put photos in and thank Lizzie Larbel-Estier from British Divers Marine Life Rescue, who built pontoons and monitored him for over 3 weeks to keep him safe. Right, onto the south coast then. West Penwith South is monitored by the National Coastwatch Institute, which is fantastic, and it's great to keep getting their data. And Teresa Bolden is the ID coordinator for that site, and she managed to ID this one. It's a challenging site to do IDs. It's a long way away, but she got a link to the lizard, which was fantastic. Mounts Bay West, so coming through. Kate Williams, who is our photo ID coordinator, has started to produce short reports for a lot of the sites, and this was the first one that she's done recently, so you can expect more site reports from us in 2022. It's great to be able to give our volunteers feedback on what's been seen. And a notable sighting from Marine Discovery in April 2021 was a common seal. Unfortunately, it's the other side to a common seal they've seen previously, so we still don't know whether they've got one or two. And we said goodbye to Walford, a little ex-rehab seal, bless him, who wasn't very old, who didn't last very long. And I've got his flipper tag to remind me that they don't all make it on my desk. Thank you very much to Constance for giving me the flipper tag. Seaweed has been re-identified multiple times. He's a beautiful, beautiful male seal at that site. And when we went filming with Countryfile later on in the year, we got this ID, which is Square U. He's been seen at the site since 2013, so they were quite impressed with that. This one had been seen since 2019, but check out these ones. This one was first ID'd there in 2020, and look at the date. Okay, so returning on exactly the same date. And then another seal, exactly the same date a year later. And it shows just how constant some of these seal routines can be. They're doing stuff and they have a reason for doing it, and there's a routine, and we just need to get a head around it. Right, onto the Lizard Hub, which has been taken over by Jeremy and Angela Gilson from Sarah, our Sanctuaries at Seas Ranger. They monitored a lot of molted pups early on, and then later on in the year they were delighted to welcome back their lizard regular, Liz 15 Key. She's the only seal really that we have on our records that spends most of the year at one site. You can see she's been seen shed loads of times, over 1,000 times, and this doesn't even have 2021 data in it. Incredibly, I raised the issue that she would be moving away to have a pup somewhere else, but she didn't. She stayed put to have her pup at the same site, so she's a real exception. Seal alliance signs went up at the site, which is great, thanks guys, and another seal interacting with a pot buoy and a long rope at low water. So maybe weighted ropes would help with this issue. There's a video if you want to watch it. And then this seal appeared in 2021, not been seen since 2015. We've put him on our intranet for other people to see if they can identify him, and no. So where has he gone in all those other years? This is the Hub team. Fantastic to get a face-to-face meetup and to celebrate Jeremy writing a report based on 2020, which he'll be doing hopefully again in 2021. So just to give you a flavour of 1 month on the lizard, it was surveyed every day throughout August. 32% of the observed seals were hauled out. They had 10 new additions to the catalogue, and 63% of the seals were re-identified, which is a very high percentage. And in August, they had 431 re-IDs. That's how hard they have to work. 18 new seals, and there were 2 matches. So huge thanks to that team for incredible hard work. And coming a little bit away from the main site, but this is Ghost with her pup. This is the female in the love story who didn't return to her male in 2021. This is her with her newborn pup. She'd been lying in the blood pool. She got a little bit of blood on her pup, but the pup successfully weaned. So well done, Ghost. 18 pups in 19 years. Wow, that's going some. And then these photos, another seal that's been disappeared for 7 years. So I hope you're getting a bit of a theme here that some of our seals disappear to other places for a long time. Our census, so we do 4 censuses a year, and our census has been helpful in getting some of the areas where routine volunteers don't get regularly. And Lizard East is one of those cases in point, where we have a seal that was identified thanks to Mark Grantham during the census, ID'd Lizard West, and she was already in the catalogue. We're discovering some work that Ross did for us in 2021, that maybe seals commute between Lou and the lizard a lot. Maybe they go out of the area, but maybe they spend most of the time between lizard and Lou, who knows. Okay, on to the fowl. So we recruited some boat owners in 2021 to report seals that they see when they're going in and out of the fowl, and Cedric and Dave sent in these photos. So Cedric got a great story back about the seal that he saw hauled out on some human gear in the fowl. Basically, she spends time in the fowl in the summer look, but in the winter and the spring, she's on the Roseland. So great to be able to send that feedback to volunteers. The Roseland had Seal Alliance stuff put up, and Kirsten, who processes all the photos for IDs on the Roseland, is fantastic with taggies. So she's labelled on this particular day all the taggies that were present on the 21st of February. Later on in the year, June was a very busy month. Seal Alliance signs went up, very busy, hardly any space for seals on the Roseland in the summer. The National Trust noticed the high numbers of kayaks and paddleboarders, so they put up a sign, which is really fantastic. They're great partners for this site. But there were still seals around, and they were looking forward to the seals returning to the beach. And this is a classic input for June from Kirsten. Some of the key IDs of regulars that she saw on the left side, and then on the right side, one particular seal she added to the catalogue just to show you how the patterns changed through their first annual molt. So summer 2020, winter 2020 and spring 2021, look at this beautiful high contrast pattern emerging. It was the fact that the seal got 4 staple-like scars on its side that made this ID much easier. We thought you'd be interested to see that. Of course, people then camped on the haul out beach for several days. We now know what to do when that happens again. And Kirsten also processed these photos of seals eating plastic. So, you know, marine debris, need to keep it in the forefront of our mind, big issue. And then, of course, later on in the year, fantastic pups emerging, which is lovely. The end of the year, we were very worried about Ellis, the common seal, because this nasty wound that he's got on his back looks suppurating. Very nasty purulent discharge, which needs to be monitored. And we're a bit worried about him, to be perfectly honest. This is not a wound, as I just described it. This is some sort of tracking infection that started from nothing. So watch this space on that one. Right, round to St Austell Bay, where Emma processes photos and Rob does all the surveying. Been regularly surveyed since 2014. In 2020, there were 2 pups, one that was stillborn. The other one we think was successfully weaned. But in 2021, 4 live pups. 2 pupping sites, so very exciting, and 3 of them successfully weaned. So these are the 4 pups: Bod, Bart, Brannock and Barnacle. Flipping heck, beautiful and interesting that I think probably 3 of them are females. I don't know about Brannock, but the others look like females. The St Austell Bay stakeholder group I will tell you more about in another talk, but basically rewilding the headland. Fencing has been put up to reduce noise and lessen shadows from people on the cliff onto seals on the haul out, and signs have been put up, which Rob got a great photo of people actually reading it. And huge thanks to Mara Young, who's one of our volunteers in Scotland, and she's actually been working abroad as well. She's written a report for the St Austell Bay volunteers, which is great. On to Lou. Restart of monthly surveys. We couldn't do any in 2020 because of conditions and COVID, but they restarted in April 2021. For the first year ever, they had seasonal residential volunteers. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about those because they're recruiting for some more if you think you might be interested. This is us returning after the first survey after December 2019. So this was April, looking very happy to be back. Sunrise, who is one of the regular adult males at the site, hauled out a few months later on a very close rock, which was very unusual. So that was quite exciting. These are the 4 volunteer rangers who were recruited, and as I say, they're advertising for more, so you need to get in touch with the Cornwall Wildlife Trust to look at their PR and social media because they're recruiting now. And this was just one fantastic LISPIP survey, Lew Island Photo ID project. Beautiful birds, beautiful seals, fantastic chicks, lots of people and activity. So disturbance, 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 worrying increase in 2021. Volunteers began getting some really systematic disturbance data. Incidents appeared chronic because there were a lot of people a lot of the time. Paddlers in particular, so feeding events with the boat operators were down, so that was really good news. So we've been doing a lot of awareness raising work, the Photo ID Hub, which have become independent, have been going off on their own and doing some great awareness raising work and working with statutory agencies. So this was a poster that was created for Lou. Claire's on the call. She sent this in. You know, it's a great poster just advertising about being responsible while you're out on the water. RAIM, right on the southeast coast of Cornwall, rehabilitated seal pup, constantly making a nuisance of itself, bless it, by hauling up on public beaches. British Divers Marine Life Rescue and the local groups and all the local volunteers have been working tirelessly to keep this seal safe. It has also been seen in Devon. So we'll move on to Devon. Monitoring here by the Seal Project, Sarah Greenslade, utter legend. They've started doing boat-based surveys to add to their land-based surveys. They've seen common seals. So Sarah saw 4 common seals on one particular survey. But when the report came out about the first records of common seals pupping in Devon, when it came out in 2021, Sarah only went and ID'd some of the common seals that were in the report. Way to go, lady, because common seal ID is even harder. And then she's had to help out with trying to keep this ex-rehab seal safe. We did have a seal, a juvenile seal, doing exactly the same thing in 2020, but who wasn't rehab. So it's not the fact it's a rehab seal that makes it important. It's just it's a juvenile seal. And I'm going to play this video because it's an example of seals causing disturbance of their own species. But there is some incredible acrobatics to follow, and I just thought you might want to see it because seals are amazingly athletic. So it's just disturbed one seal off the haul out. Now it's doing some porpoising, testing the water, because this is what it's going to do next. Oh, incredible. I just love seals. Teach me something new all the time. Sarah also had seal pups to contend with and keep safe. Through to Dorset, Sarah Hodgson from the Dorset Wildlife Trust monitors seals there. Basically, sightings were 33% up in 2021, not necessarily because there are more seals. It could be more observer effort and better reporting. 63% were grey seals, and the majority were between April, May and July and August. I'm delighted to say she saw Fiver again, who was first seen in Dorset in 2014. We haven't seen Fiver yet, so where does she spend the rest of her year? They began the first Poole Harbour census, which is really fantastic. Dorset Wildlife Trust with Birds of Poole Harbour to do the land-based stuff. Dorset Wildlife Trust got to go out on the boat. And then, of course, best laid plans, thick fog for a lot of the day. They did record 2 common seals, but they're reviewing their methodology and they're going to do it again in 2022. Well done, guys, for starting that. Human impacts, disturbance continued to be an impact. There were several instances where juvenile grey seals were interacting with people and several instances where people were interacting with resting seals. Some of the seals being the ones that had been a problem. I'm not going to say a problem. They were just doing their normal thing, for goodness sake. They were doing their stuff and they were interacting with people because there was a shared overlap between the space, human space and seal space. But basically, they've distributed a lot of Seal Alliance leaflets. They put up signs. They've done a great job working with all the local volunteers and the local teams. And British Divers Marine Life Rescue have been amazing, sharing advice on their website and through their social media channels to reduce impacts. This is a classic example. This is possibly one of the juveniles who wasn't an ex-rehab seal, who was potentially engaging with a paddleboarder. Management and conservation. Devon Wildlife Trust adopted our Seal Alliance new photo policy, so they don't use photos of seals looking at the camera because they could have been disturbed. If they use a close-up photo, they say how it was taken with a big zoom lens, and they don't share locations of sites, nor do they show pictures of seal and human interactions online in public. Rescues and rehabs. So British divers, all the RSPCA checked on at least 16 seals. Most of the calls were juvenile greys, but 2 common seal pups were uplifted and taken into rehab. Only 1 grey seal pup was taken to West Hatch, but because of the severity of its injuries, it was euthanized to prevent further suffering. At least 4 dead seals, 3 of which were grey after a period of stormy weather, but unfortunately these carcasses can't be post-mortems. There's no funding for that yet. Okay, I feel appalling having done such a great roundup of seals. I was asked to do otters as well, about which I know hardly anything. So there's just a couple of minutes about otters, and apologies to Keith, big apologies to Dave Groves for not doing justice to this subject. We need to do this better next year, and I'm not the best person to do this. So otter appearances. Keith reported otter appearances in January 2021, Plymouth Sound and the Plym, Sutton Harbour and Hoe Lake. Nick Hutt got some fantastic stuff. Followed by Mountbatten Breakwater later on in the month, and then in February they were reported at Plymouth Yacht Harbour by Graham Parker. And can you see on the right, if you go and search for Graham Parker's Facebook page, you will see the video that he caught of the otter on board his vessel in Plymouth Yacht Haven Marina. Wow, what an incredible thing to have an otter on board your vessel. Possibly not great for the otter, I don't know. Maybe he left a calling card or she left a calling card, who knows. But either way, how fantastic to catch that on camera. Dave Groves reported about an otter unfortunately dead in a lobster pot, which he highlighted in July 2021 at Mousehole. It looks like an amateur pot that was shore set. Evidence of the possibility of conflict between human activity and otters, and was flagged with the Cornwall Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority. So well done to Dave for putting that issue potentially on the map. But more importantly, I guess, Dave's paper on otters in Cornwall that included an account of coastal otters in Cornwall was finally published in May 2021. Congratulations, Dave. Great that you got a paper about the diet of Eurasian otters around the coastal fringe of Cornwall. Absolutely brilliant, and to be massively celebrated. You're fantastic advocates for otters in the southwest. Thank you. And thank you to Bob Earl and to Keith Scott for sending in those summaries. That's it for otters. That's why I feel so bad. I'm sorry. But huge thanks to all our incredibly inspiring volunteers. 331 sent in surveys, and an unknown number of people, because I haven't counted you up, in addition have volunteered to process all the stories and the information so I can give you that roundup. Just for your information, we now do have Seal Research Trust volunteer training online. If you're interested, email seals@cornwallsealgroup.co.uk. And we also do have our first full course about seals with the Field Studies Council, Discovering UK Seals, Identification, Ecology and Conservation. 4-week course, Biology, Ecology, Species ID and Conservation. Available if you have a look at the Field Studies Council website. And it's me coming back full circle, because my first job was with the Field Studies Council, working as a cleaner in my year off before I went to uni. And you never know where it's going to lead, because I had huge respect for all the lecturers and now I'm one myself. Just shows how life can turn funny. All right, that's it. I'm pleased to say, thank goodness, that I'm a little bit ahead of time, because we do want to leave time for questions, but we are going to have to try and stick. So Gareth is going to have, have I stopped sharing my screen? I think I have. Gareth is going to have 10 minutes on telling you about setting up a seal group. I need to share my screen again. Apologies, I forgot I was supposed to be doing that. Here we go, Gareth. Hopefully you'll be able to see this in a second. There we go.
I can see it too. I'll stick my hand up and I'll tell you when to move it on, because I've got a few issues at the moment. I can't move my slides on, but I just want to say thanks to you for that sort of presentation. It inspires me every time I listen to you. And thank you, Helen, for creating this opportunity for us to speak as well. Next slide.
Gareth, I'm just going to interrupt. You are going to need to tell me because I can't see you.
Okay, next slide then. So I just want to thank the Gower Society for their support when we first sort of set up. And they gave us a very generous grant as well, which I'll come back to a little bit later. But I think it's time that I confess something to you. I am a total sealaholic. And if the word sealaholic doesn't exist, then it should, because I am the definition of a nerd when it comes down to seals. And I've actually got you in the Southwest to thank for this, because it was 6 years ago that I met this little one, next slide too, whilst I was staying on Lundy. And she stole my heart, basically. And this particular photograph was the exact time that she popped her head out of the water. I was sitting on a rocky ledge, and it was something which I would say was similar to like a romantic novel, where the two of us were looking deep into our sort of dark eyes there. And I was smitten. And when I came back to the mainland, I read up as much as I could about seals. And the more I read, the more it sort of whet my appetite. So next slide, Sue. So just moving on a couple of years, I presently am one of the hub coordinators for the Gower area. I live in Swansea, and Gower is a peninsula which juts into the Bristol Channel. It's one of the first areas in this country back in 1956. It was made an area of outstanding natural beauty, and that's what I undertake the photographic surveys from there. And it's whilst I was doing these surveys that I spoke to a lot of people who it became apparent to me that they were very, very interested in seals, not as nerdy as I was, but there was a lack of information locally. Next slide, Sue. And unfortunately, I was also witnessing periods of disturbance. I'm sure this is familiar to you all, coming from the sort of the land, the sea, and certainly the air on that side. And it was all very well for me to think, oh, I hope these things will actually sort of go away. But the bottom line is they weren't going to go away until I did some action for myself. So next slide, Sue. And I always believe in this, is that hope, there's no good hope in the things will go away. You need to take action on it. Next slide, Sue. So basically, I put out on a local social media, Facebook sort of page to see if I could generate any interest. And quite quickly, I had 70 people who got in touch and said, yes, they'd love to be part and parcel of a group itself. So I formed Gower Seal Group, and our main sort of aims were to accurately inform and educate the local people, but at the same time, hoping that we could reduce or minimize the occurrences of disturbance. Next slide, Tim. And of these sort of this group itself, bear in mind this was all going on as sort of COVID was hitting us, and bear in mind Wales's restrictions were far more than England. They were more restrictive, and they went on for a lot longer. But when we were eventually got together and sort of met, we created some work groups, because I wanted people to buy into the idea. It wasn't all about myself. I suppose the analogy was I could drive the bus, but I wanted people to get on the bus. So we created these work groups, and I think it was one of the problems, one of the mistakes that I actually made from the start is that I overestimated what people's sort of contributions or commitment would be to the group itself. And I got to be honest to say there were probably more talkers and far less doers within the group itself. So one of the things I did to create a little bit of sort of motivation is that we went beach cleaning. And there's one particular net, and believe it or not, this particular bit of ghost gear had been entangled in a sea cave in a small inlet on Gower for over 20 years. Well, I got a group together, and this is some of us here, and we went down, and within 6 hours, we cut away 141 kilos of ghost gear. And it was a double-edged sword for me, actually, because it started galvanizing the sort of the team together. In fact, one of the girls that Emily said on a Facebook post that she was proud to be a member of Gower Seal Group. So as far as I was concerned, that was a result. Next slide, Sue. From there, I wanted to really keep it sort of local and for people to be able to relate to things which are on their doorstep. So, for example, our Gower Seal Group logo is what is taken from a photograph I actually took during one of my surveys there. And my amazing grandson, he did some fiddling around on the computer and he did this sort of artwork and he designed the Gower Seal Group logo for us. Next slide, Sue. And again, it was important as well that people had the sense of belonging, the sense of purpose, which was greater than just themselves as well. So getting the corporate sort of clothing together as well for them to wear with pride. Next slide, Sue. As I mentioned earlier on, 2021 was quite a difficult time for us with COVID. So our leaflet and signage campaign supporting the UK Seal Alliance was very, very important there. So we had a bit of a piecemeal approach to this because a lot of people didn't feel confident about sort of coming out once COVID was around and things. But we certainly put out a lot of sort of leaflets and signs. And actually, for the amount of work that we did do, it was very, very successful because we were engaging with people were reading the signs, very similar to what Sue was saying earlier on about people taking photographs, so looking at people reading these signs and then asking the questions. Next slide, Sue. But of course, 2022 for us is what we're actually sort of focusing on itself. And next slide. And it's important that as part of our group, the core feature is that we've got the Seal Ambassadors. And the Seal Ambassadors, we've got 10 at the moment. And these are the authority. These are the people that will accompany me on events, going into schools, doing public presentations and talks, etc. And the prerequisite was them attending and listening to Sue's Seal Ambassador program, which she ran last September, which gave really the foundation. And since then, we've sort of built upon it. So it's all part and parcel of continuing professional development. So in this one here, I've been given an input on seal surveying and how that data actually goes into sort of inform and influence sort of local and national policy. We spoke about photo ID. I've got my grab bag there as a BDMLR medic as well, so showing what sort of equipment I carry with me on a 24-hour basis as well. For example, this Friday we've got a continuing of the Seal Ambassador training, where we've got the local coordinator for the BDMLR. Lizzie's going to give an input about her role as the coordinator. And we've also got a very experienced RSPCA officer, Ellis, who's going to talk about rehabilitation and the rehabilitation centres. It just so happens that both of them are also Gower Seal Group members. Result. Next slide, Sue. I'm really privileged actually to volunteer at RSPCA West Hatch in Somerset, and I've been up there for about 6 or 7 weekends this past sort of season, spending 3 or 4 days at a time, helping out with their amazing staff. So this gave me an opportunity, next slide Sue, to take the Seal Ambassadors up there, and there's me suited and booted. So it gives them an opportunity to not only see, but to smell what rehabilitation is like, because a mixture of seal poo and mackerel is quite something to. I don't eat fish for about a week when I come back from West Hatch. Next slide, Sue. So again, it was important, for them to see what was happening behind the scenes. And just going back to the grant that we actually had from the Gower Society, I wanted our group to be a professional one-stop shop in this area to go to. So what we actually did is to involve everyone with the design and the graphics of the banners. So we've got the pop-up banners and that large life-size one on the bottom there. These are some of our sort of Seal Ambassadors. We bought a projector. We bought a projector screen as well. And it does help as well having the secretary of the Gower Society as a group member as well. And she's standing on the left-hand side. Next slide, Sue. So again, with the way that we wanted to create these sort of banners, instead of having lots of information, we wanted to draw people in to engage with them. So we were setting the seed really by saying, you know, how do we identify different seals? Come and have a chat with us and we'll tell you. So drawing people in every time. We've tried this out on a couple of places and it's really worked extremely well on that side. So I'm very, very pleased, again, going back to the Gower Society for giving us the leg up that we actually sort of needed to start with as well. So we look forward to a really good working relationship with them. Next slide, too. One thing that we're really excited, we haven't done it yet, but we're about to do it, is that we're going into schools. We've got a junior seal ambassador. You can see the two top signs there, junior seal ambassador and the mini seal ambassador education programs. And we're about to go into Nelston Primary School, actually. And I'm going to do my first talk to 3 to 6 year olds. And these are the mini seal ambassadors. So we've got a very interactive engagement with them, and they'll be taking part in a bit of a quiz, and they'll get the mini seal ambassador sticker, and also certificate as well if they pass the quiz. But don't tell them, because whoever does the quiz does pass the quiz, and they will all get the sticker at the end of the day. Next slide, Joe. So one thing about Gower is that it's publicly known where these sensitive seal haul-out sites are. And, you know, Sue mentioned earlier on, we want people to enjoy watching seals, but there's a way of actually doing it responsibly, doing it, as per the sort of Watching Seals Well leaflet that the Seal Alliance campaign is all about. So what I actually did is to do a series of walk and talks. So in other words, just taking people out to these sites because they know where they are, but do it in a responsible way. And this is just one group there that I actually sort of took out. So once we go in, we can watch these seals from a distance. We can use our binoculars, use the zoom cameras, keep quiet, keep low, and all that sort of thing as well. And this is a great knock-on effect as well. So it's managing a particular problem. Next slide, Sue. One thing I'm really pleased at, and it was a link that Sue and myself made with the Welsh Government appointed Wildlife and Crime Coordinator, Rob Taylor. We work closely with Rob. And in fact, I had a Zoom meeting with him yesterday as well. But I've been asked, I was involved with the Wildlife Crime Officer training. And this was something, this photograph was taken about 6 weeks ago, where we trained 23 of their officers. This has had a fantastic networking and knock-on effect because since then, I've been sort of actively involved with Operation Seabird, which has been launched in Wales on the April 14th. I'm part and parcel of a sort of mammal strategy group as well. And I was asked yesterday if I would undertake a training of their police youth volunteers, which is these youth volunteers used to be called police cadets, but they're aged between 14 and 18 years of age. So, I mean, what a fantastic age to really sort of captivate these people and inspire them for the future when it comes down to marine sort of conservation. So I'm really looking forward to that. Next slide, Sue. And the one thing I always believe in is the fact that if you lose your why, you lose your way. And I think really at the end of the day, when you look at this, it reminds us why we are doing it. And this is the photograph I took in sort of in West Hatch of one of the seals there. And I think it's absolutely gorgeous. How can you not love that? That is absolutely wonderful. And my final slide, Sue. I just wanted to say diolch yn fawr iawn from this little part of Wales. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I really look forward to answering any questions once Dan and Sue have finished. And that's it, Sue. Over to you, Helen.
You were muted then, Sue. Sorry. Thank you very much, Gareth. That was brilliant. And thank you as well for your roundup, Sue. That was fab. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break now. And then, yeah, so pop off and get a cup of tea and whatnot. And we'll see you back here at 1:15. So thank you very much.
Hi Helen, is everything okay with you?
All good, thank you.
Good.
Got some good questions coming in.
Okay, excellent. Did we have any feedback issues?
It was all clear on my end. We did have one person saying the sound wasn't great on his end, but I think, yeah, most people were saying it was fine. So yeah, not to worry.
And thank you, Helen, for being a wonderful host.
Thanks for moving my slides on as well, Sue. It's really frustrating. I can't do it myself.
We'll get you sorted for next time, Gareth.
Yeah.
And well done, great talk, and what an inspiring story. I can't believe how much you've achieved in such a short period of time. Well done.
Yeah. Well, it's thanks to you and Dan, actually, because I mean, when I listen to your sort of stories as well, it does inspire me. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And it'll be fantastic, actually, Helen, if this talk actually does inspire other people. And looking at some of the questions there, where people are saying that they'd like to get involved as well. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, definitely seems like there's a lot of interest sort of all over the country as well, not just around Cornwall. Sounds great.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Helen, can I ask if you could triage the questions for us and ask the questions afterwards? Would that be possible?
That's fine. I'm compiling them all,
I'm not very good at looking at the chat at the same time.
I know. That's fine. Yeah, you still want to save them for the end? Yeah, that's fine.
I think that's possibly just wise, because if not, we can always download the questions and email answers or do the answers that way. Find another way if we run out of time.
No worries.
Dan, are you okay? You look like you might. Oh no, you're not frozen. That's cool.
All good.
Gareth, when Dan starts, you might have to mute.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah. Yeah, we had a very positive meeting yesterday with the local police regarding Operation Seabird sale. So it's nice to see that that is actually building up momentum quite nicely in that one.
And the other thing is, the other news is Cornwall and Devon Police are going to do Operation Seabird as well. They're signed up to it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's really great. That's really great. I'll go on mute.
Great. Are we ready to get started on round 2, I think? Great. So we've got another talk with Sue now. She's going to take us all through the People Protecting Precious Places project. Over to you, Sue.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Helen. And we do hugely appreciate the University of Exeter, Brendan Godley and Helen Chadwick both facilitating this for us. One less thing for us to worry about. So in 2021, we had a Green Recovery Challenge Fund grant. It was the biggest one we've ever had to do this project called People Protecting Precious Places. And I wanted to take you through, first of all, hopefully I'll have time for a little bit more, but firstly through the report. The reason why we put the bid in to do this particular piece of work was that this is how busy a single site can be during 2 hours, and it's a sensitive seal site with seals hauled out, multiple human activities around it, and we knew that disturbance was always a waste of energy, sometimes results in injury and can be fatal. We thought we can't not do anything about this, so we put in a grant which we were successful in achieving thanks to DEFRA and the National Lottery Heritage Fund for giving us this Green Recovery Challenge Fund money. So we had a research ranger, Katie Bellman, who led the project and who was fantastic. She's no longer with us, sadly, but she is still in marine conservation, which is great, working for Cornwall Wildlife Trust on their Yorkshire project as an engagement officer, doing very similar work, which is fabulous. Anyway, she produced a training pack for people who were going to be conducting surveys. So this had to be very systematic and very rigorous, and she produced this fantastic manual, which we are happy to share with people who want to do future surveys. She trained the students and the citizen scientists who were conducting the surveys at the various sites. You can see the sites varied a lot, from being quite wild and windy to in somebody's front garden, where cups of tea were much more available. So what did we discover and what did we do? So the project completed with the events and interpretation materials. We did 110 surveys. We did 15 Seal Alliance meetings, 2 Seal Alliance events, 21 blogs, 10 newsletters, 5 updates for our Wild Seal Supporter and Adoption Scheme. 64,000 leaflets went to north of John O'Groats to south of Land's End, and they were even translated into French, Dutch and Welsh. 3 stakeholder groups I'm going to tell you about, a PPP report I'm going to tell you about, and some wildlife safe courses for the WISE scheme. So this is the report that is publicly available. We launched it in February, which I will talk more about later. And the first section of the report was looking at our routine survey data from 2013 to 2019. Okay, I think that should say 2021. Anyway, basically, Bex Allen from the Cornwall College Newquay, who is our science advisor, analysed all this data, put it through a model, and got some great outcomes from it. So basically, this data only looks at serious level 3 disturbance, which is most of the time seals leaving the land to go in the sea in response to the human stimulus or other stimulus. Basically, what did we discover? Well, we discovered that disturbance was widespread right around the southwest coast. The brighter the colour, the more of a hotspot. The numbers represent the number of surveys. So in actual fact, the highest hotspot area was this one, which only had 94 surveys. So it was a hotspot because of a lack of surveying, or lack of easy surveying, because a lot of the time it's an offshore site where we can't survey it very well from land. However, these areas where we've got much more surveys, we know is a much more accurate feature. And we're looking at the proportion of surveys where disturbance was occurring and where it was recorded. Basically, we also discovered that disturbance was all year round. However, when Bex looked at the statistical significance of this, she discovered that actually one season drove the statistically significant increase, and not surprisingly, that was the summer. The main causes of the disturbance were walkers, tripper boats and kayaks. When you look at the seasonal spread of the disturbance, it varies according to whether you look at incidents on the left or seals affected on the right. So basically, the summer has more incidents, but the winter has more seals. We have more incidents of disturbance when there are more people around, but we have more seals disturbed when there are more seals around. So if you look overall, it evens itself out throughout the year. The total number of disturbances by cause showed that walkers caused the most serious disturbance incidents, followed by tripper boats and kayaks. When you look at the number of seals disturbed, you can see that actually most of the disturbance incidents involved relatively small numbers of seals. However, you can see all the outliers. There were a large number of events that involved a large number of seals. On average, 1,106 seals were seriously disturbed in Cornwall in each year. Most were the smaller numbers, but as you can see, over 50 seals were disturbed in quite a number of occasions. Apologies, I put that in twice. And then trends in the number of disturbances. Bex put all of this through a model. I'm not going to try and explain it, but basically looking at each of the causes to see whether there was a significant increase in the level 3 disturbance per cause, and effectively there was for trip boats, kayaks, other private boats, SUPs, ribs, swimmers, airplanes, jet skis and multiple types. And you can actually see from most of these graphs that there's a bit of a hike at the end. So there wasn't much of an increase to start with, but in the later years, 2018 onwards, there was a bit of a blip up. So then we went on to look in section 2 at these people protecting precious places, human activity and seal interaction surveys. And what Katie and the students and the citizen scientists and our rangers did was they looked at what seals were doing and they were looking at what people were doing. They didn't just look through the telescope, but they recorded on a camera a video of the entire 2-hour survey around low tide so that we could come back and process the video data separately. It enabled us to collect the data much more efficiently. We had 4 sites around Cornwall, from just west of Newquay, one either side of St Ives Bay and one on the south coast. These were the identified hotspots from Bex's map. And this data was crunched by Michael Hunt, who is a data analyst at Cornwall College Newquay, who worked on this particular section of the data. There was a high spatial overlap of human and seal presence, and all these sites had that overlap and they were offshore sites, because that's the sites that are used in the summer. So these are the 4 sites. We've tried to hide the specific locations. We don't want to make the situation worse. But basically, between 2019, we had 70 surveys, and in 2021, we did 110 2-hour surveys at these 4 sites in June, July and August. The results for all sites showed that activity was present for 65% of the survey intervals, the survey interval being 15 minutes. Disturbance was observed in 68% of the intervals when we were present. So we were present for 2/3 of the time, and disturbance was recorded 2/3 of the time when we were present. Looking at whether there was a significant difference between 2019 and 21, there wasn't. There was no statistically significant increase, and we are just hopeful that that was due to our mitigation work, the extensive mitigation work that we actually put in place. I guess for better research, it would have been don't do the mitigation until you've completed the research, but we care too much about seals and we wanted to do something to help them now. Nevertheless, I'm hoping that the 2 darker columns are the ones that you can focus on. So the rows are the sites, but intervals when activity was present varied per site, with the most activity present 84% of the time in Mounts Bay and only 45% of the time at Petunia. But when you look at the percentage of intervals when people were present, that disturbance occurred. In Mounts Bay, disturbance only occurred in half the time when people were present, whereas at West Cornwall we were up to 80% and West Penwith North almost 80%. So you can begin to see there's a lot of variability between sites. If we look at how frequently seals were seriously, no, I'm going to take that back. This was all levels of disturbance. So this is level 1 looking up, level 2 moving to the sea, level 3 going into the sea. All the levels of disturbance occurred once every 24 to 25 minutes at West Cornwall, once every 22 to 26 minutes at West Penwith North. They were about the same, so we've got a straight-faced icon, whereas top right at Petunia there was a significant improvement, with disturbance dropping from once every 32 minutes to once every 62 minutes. We're delighted about that, and actually that's the place where we've been doing the mitigation for the longest, so we're just hopeful that long-term effective mitigation might reproduce that result at other sites, which would be great. However, at Mounts Bay, which is the most accessible, easily accessible site for humans, disturbance got worse, doubled almost, from once every 34 minutes to once every 18 minutes. When we look at the disturbance by the activity group and site for the 4 different sites, I think you can see that there were a number of key causes for the disturbance, from trip boats to ribs to other motorised to non-motorised to air-based. Whereas at West Cornwall, trip boats and ribs stuck out. Petunia, small amounts of disturbance across a variety of things, whereas West Penwith North, trip boats and air-based. So West Cornwall and West Penwith North had clearer main causes of disturbance, sea-based disturbance. If you look at the proportion of the haul out that were disturbed, so how many seals, what proportion of the hauled seals were disturbed, it varied again. At West Cornwall and Mounts Bay, it was almost 50% of the haul out. The seals that were there were disturbed into the sea or just looking. So it's all levels of disturbance again. Whereas Petunia and West Penwith North were lower proportions of haul outs impacted. Level 1 disturbance occurred for more than half of the intervals. So that's just looking at the cause of the disturbance, and level 3 disturbance occurred in less, I think that says less than a third, but I can't see it, I'm sorry, you can read it hopefully. And then when you look at the number of hauled seals, so this is nothing to do with people, this is to do with just the number of seals present. This was not statistically significant, but we're keen to go back to this data and have a closer look, because less seals were hauled out in 10 of the 12 months where the recording was done at the 4 sites. So does this show that if we have disturbance, does this lead to smaller haul outs, or were the smaller haul outs just smaller numbers in the year, or was it just a blip in the data? More work to be done on that. There were 4 hotspot sites, all levels of disturbance. You can see that from what I've said, I hope anyway, that impacts varied according to the site, according to the geographical access, and according to the human activity levels and the type of human activity. But what I liked about the report, I couldn't have wished for it better really, is that we've got trip boats, ribs and air-based causes in the highest proportion of disturbance at all levels, but paddle sports, kayaks, SUPs and swimmers had the most frequent cause of the most serious disturbance. So what this is beginning to show me is that we're pointing the fingers in lots of different places. And I really want people to stop pointing fingers. I want people to start pointing the finger back at themselves and say, did I do the right thing? And if I all did the right thing and we all did the right thing, there wouldn't be an issue with disturbance. So we need to stop finger pointing at other people and start finger pointing at ourselves. Okay, so section 3 was the stakeholder. Basically, we had 3 stakeholder groups, the most active of which was St Ives Bay, followed by, apologies, Looe and St Austral Bay. The philosophy for these stakeholder groups is that we are sharing our seas as a resource. We want people to be out there and we want people to be enjoying them, but we do not want them to be impacting marine life. St Ives Bay stakeholder group did lots of things, including getting signs and leaflets up. They ran WISE courses. They had some seal ambassadors. They had ideas for guidelines of best practice, for a seal of approval and a watercraft sticker, which was fantastic. Interestingly, looking at the data for this particular site, the routine data for this particular site, you can see that it peaked in the summer in terms of seal numbers. This is the number of seals hauled out at this site. Interestingly, on the 26th of July, for a variety of reasons, we had a best practice day by pretty much every single operator who visited that particular site. And on that particular day of best practice, the best I've seen in 20 odd years, we also had the highest number of seals hauled out. So this is a win-win-win. If we can get best practice right, then the operators and the businesses get the best experience and their clients get the best stories to take away with them. So this could be a win for seals, a win for business and a win for clients and customers. So we've come up with, in the St Ives Bay stakeholder group, the best practice guidelines around this particular site. It needs a graphic designer to work on it. We'll do that. However, they also came up with this idea about a seal of approval, where if best practice operators signed up and they were able to follow these best practice guidelines most of the time, then they could, at the end of the year, when they would be monitored, get a seal of approval. One of the things that the group came up with was a watercraft sticker, and the watercraft sticker is on the left that we designed. It's not ideal because it was too subtle and too beautiful a design apparently, but nevertheless it's got some good key messages. However, I took this sticker, which we had 400 copies printed and trialled in Cornwall with a stakeholder group, to the Marine Mammal Disturbance Partnership, and they came up with national wording, and the national wording is on the right. Not finished, but work in progress. The national sticker is starting to take shape. It's too busy, it's too complicated at the minute, but we'll get there in the end. We will have a national watercraft and car sticker for everyone to use in Scotland, England and Wales and Northern Ireland. How exciting is that? Other things that the group did is that the National Trust, our partners, the National Trust at West Cornwall did some hard landscaping work to reduce disturbance. We ran 2 WISE Operators Scheme courses. We can't thank Colin Speedy enough for what he does with that programme. On to the Looe group. One of the things that the Looe Marine Conservation Group did independently, really, was produce this fantastic graphic about a happy seal, a disturbed seal, things to do, things to not do, and why we need to take action. So it's a lovely graphic that will be out in 2022. But they also worked with the local landowner to rewild the headland really substantially, and also to put some fencing in to have a green fence so people can still see the seals but with less impact. Really exciting project. The final section of the report was recommendations. We suggested that we have a national legislation to make seal disturbance illegal. I will talk more about that in my final talk. Also a national marine voluntary code of conduct for everyone, basically. I am delighted to say that's already been actioned by DEFRA, and we will have a national marine code of some description to trial in 2022 before the season starts. We also suggested that we need to start looking at licensing for commercial activity around sensitive seal sites, because the business has exponentially expanded at some of our harbours, and without licensing some of the best practice operators, this is not going to be an issue that's going to be a winnable one. Marine protected area management could have indices that include disturbance, which would be great to monitor them in MPAs, to continue all the work raising awareness in a user-friendly manner, to continue the idea of local marine stakeholder groups to encourage greater community participation and ownership of projects, so grassroots up, not imposed top down. Think about non-emergency no-fly zones, which we're already working on with RNAS Coldrose and some of the other emergency operators, and to share the report widely. And there is a Seal Alliance website that was funded by the project as well, if you want to go and explore it. The leaflet, this is the leaflet outside. This is being translated into French. This is the leaflet inside. You can have copies of these free of charge, or the artwork to print your own, depending on what you want. Just email sue@cornwallsealgroup.co.uk for that. The signs have gone up all over the place, 108 signs. These are all the leaflets in my lounge. This is a sign up with seals behind it. This is Gareth in the Gower. But leaflets have also been distributed by the St Austell Bay stakeholder group to local operators, which is fantastic. A few myths and misconceptions. Helen, I'm just going to ask you to intervene a second. Can you just tell me what time it is, please? Because or how, if I've gone over time, because
no, you're good for time.
Okay,
I've got another 5-10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. I wanted to just bust a few potential myths and misconceptions about disturbance, because impacts can be invisible and delayed. So this is a seal tombstoning, serious level 3 disturbance, leaving the land, going into the sea. This juvenile seal has no blubber layers. It is likely to break its bottom jaw or crack a rib when it does this. That will have a delayed impact and probably be life-threatening injuries for that particular seal. And yet the seal made it back to the water. So the myth is, well, the seal's okay. It's not. It's probably going to die as a result of that experience. This is a stampede over pretty hideous boulders. There's a seal in the middle that already has an injury on its side as a result of this stampede over the boulders. So the misconception here is, oh, look, the seals are running to the sea. And no, they're not. They're scared stiff and they're legging it into the sea for fear of their life. Bless them. Will that have an impact? Well, when we look at using our zoom cameras from the cliff top at a beach after a stampede, this is what we see: blood trails. This particular day, there were 17 different blood trails leading to the sea. That's 17 seals that have been seriously disturbed and injured as a result of the disturbance incident. We just can't see it. Because it's invisible generally. However, these are now open wounds that could get infected. I showed this a second ago with a case study of what we can gather information. Again, people just, this seal's staying. So there's temptation for the person to think, well, I haven't affected that seal. But of course, this is where invisible impacts come in as well. Raised heart rate, raised breathing rate, stress hormone release. I've had a panic. I can't flight because I'm too scared. So I'm going to stay put and pretend nothing's happening. And I'll go as soon as the disturbance incident is gone. So we need to start getting better at busting some of these myths and misconceptions. Social media, Dorset have already mentioned about the photo policy online. So we do have, if you're interested to see it, this photography and best practice with seals guidelines. We don't use seals looking at the camera anymore. We tend to only use seals looking relaxed, which is great. They might not be such a top quality photo, but they've been taken in a seal friendly way, and it's natural behaviour, which is what is the best thing to see, because it's most interesting and most exciting. Taken from a distance, so using the hashtag #UseYourZoom. We tend to only share small numbers of seals online as well, not large numbers of seals, because people always ask, where is it? Somebody always answers it. If somebody wants to know, we're happy to tell them, but just not publicly online. We use generic site names rather than specific site locations, but it is work in progress because we still have a lot of leaflets with seals looking at the camera. We can't chuck them away. And then I just want to finish on this, which is we've come up with a new concept about risk assessments for seals, which I know Gareth is really keen on using. We need to get better at using this when we're surveying. It's like any human risk assessment. You look at the potential outcome and you look at the probability, and then you times the two to get a risk rating. So this is somebody blown away by seeing a seal in the sea. This is likely to be a raised heart rate or raised breathing rate for the seal, probably the humans as well, to be fair. It's likely to be probable it will have raised heart rate and breathing rates. The likelihood of that is probable. So when you times the two together, you get a low risk rating for this particular incident. However, the stampede that I just showed you is likely to be injury taking a long time to heal, probable for those 17 seals. So it is a high risk disturbance. And this one is another example. Hauled seals quite high up on intertidal rocks. They hauled out at high tide, tide's gone out. What's the likelihood of this? Well, depending on what is under the water when they tombstone into the sea, that could be a life-threatening injury, and it's possible. So we've got a 15 score for a high level risk. So it's just for people to begin to understand that not all disturbance incidents are equal. And this slide sums it up perfectly. This seal up here, which is above high water mark, is a very high risk rating. This one is, it's at high tide mark, it's a very high risk rating. This one is medium, and even these ones would be movement towards the sea, probable if somebody went close. It's still a medium risk. So we need to understand that there are different levels of risk for sure. Okay, I'm all done. Hopefully that covered the project as short as possible. If you want a copy of the report, it's available. You just need to ask.
Thank you very much, Sue. We will move straight on to Dan's talk now. So we're joined by Dan Jarvis from British Divers Marine Life Rescue. He's the Cornwall Area Coordinator and has recently also become the Development and Welfare Officer. And Dan is going to talk to us about challenging case studies in the Southwest, including the G7, hand-fed wild seals, and of course, the infamous walrus. So Dan, over to you. You're muted, Dan, I can't see you.
Sorry about that. I shared the screen and suddenly my option to unmute disappeared. I'll just do that again.
We can hear you now, don't worry.
That was weird. Right, hopefully this is just about to come up for you. So this is sort of three talks in one. So management of world leaders, wandering walruses and wayward seals. So this is sort of a bit of a scattergun talk really on three completely different subjects. Or well, one of them is completely different, the other two might have similarities. Right, lots to get through, less waffle. So starting off, last year, of course, we had the G7 summit held in Jarvis Bay in Cornwall, with world leaders coming for a few days to the area. And of course, along with that, a major security operation around it. Now, we linked into this as we, of course, initially, at least from the British Divers Marine Life Rescue perspective, were a little concerned that if there just happened to be a injured seal come up on the beach, or God forbid even a live stranded cetacean, that we might need access to the beach in an emergency. So that's where we started off contact with Devon and Cornwall Police, who were the lead on organising the Operation Shawnee security operation. But actually, to their credit, Devon and Cornwall Police already had come up with a rural affairs advisory group specifically for this event, and they had two officers, Chris Collins and Julian Fry, who did some absolutely amazing work working with other conservation groups and also statutory bodies as well, looking at all sorts of issues around SSSI land use and licensing to put things on there temporarily, through to disturbance of badger sets at the Tregenna Castle Hotel, where some of the event was being held as well. You know, all of those things they had to look into in a really quite short amount of time. So myself, on behalf of Cornwall Marine and Coastal Code Group, which we sit on along with Sue Sayer from Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust, and Abby Crosby, who chairs that group from Cornwall Wildlife Trust, and many others. We got involved in the conversation to set up a marine wildlife disturbance mitigation document and protocols that we could give them and distribute to their teams to minimise any disturbance to the marine wildlife in the St Ives Bay area, but also other areas that might get used, such as the Fowl Estuary, Fowl Bay area actually also had some activity as well. So in these discussions, we had permission to access sensitive, closed off restricted areas for live strandings. We also set up sensitive site monitoring surveys using volunteers, which I'll get onto more in a moment. We also set up a real-time reporting network for cetaceans and basking sharks as well, so we could make them aware as these animals were sighted in the sensitive areas that they were there, what they were doing, how many and what direction they were moving in. So they could also avoid that area with their on-water security vessels to, again, minimise the disturbance. And we also plan to provide daily feedback briefings to them from the previous day's events. So if there were any issues that cropped up on the hoof, then we could feed that back to them and offer some mitigation advice and recommendations. So going back to those surveys that we set up, we identified 3 sensitive sites, one of which was subdivided into 2, as there's 2 seal haul-outs within it which couldn't be surveyed from one location. The daily survey period was from 5:30 AM, so just after sunrise, to 9:30 in the evening, so around sunset. So it's a really long day, 16 hours per day per site survey coverage that we were aiming for. And this covered 8 days from the 7th to the 14th of June, which in total per site was 128 hours, or overall combined 384 hours of volunteer survey effort that we were asking for, again, on relatively short notice, you know, less than a month's notice. Our survey effort was really, really fantastic, and the response that we had 49 volunteers from Cornwall Marine and Coastal Code groups, BDMLR, CSGRT and CWT, who took part in these surveys, some of them multiple times. Some of the sites actually did receive 100% daily survey coverage, particularly over the important dates when the most activity was happening around the G7 summit, which was fantastic. And in all, we covered 232 survey hours, or around 60% of the hours available to survey. But as some of our volunteers worked in pairs, that actually equated to 365 volunteer hours, which is really, really amazing, an achievement in such a short space of time. So huge thanks to everybody who was involved in doing that, recording disturbance incidents throughout the summit and feeding that back on a daily basis for us for the daily briefings for the Operation Trelawney team. Survey sightings, we had grey seals sighted each day, of course, because some of those the survey locations were at seal sites, and we did have 2 sightings of cetaceans, which, you know, relatively speaking is, you know, quite good for us, because it meant that we didn't have to do much in that respect, because it could have been a lot busier. Some days we do have, you know, pods of common dolphins around in St Ives Bay pretty much the entire day. So yeah, we didn't have a great deal to do with that side of things, which was, you know, lucky for us, I suppose, just good coincidental timing. For the survey feedback of any disturbance, we did record quite a few disturbance incidents, but actually the very large majority were not related to G7 activity. It was actually related more to existing activity in St Ives Bay and Falmouth Bay with trip boats going out. So that's actually where most of the incidents came from. The only real G7 related activity that did cause a disturbance was one of the large naval ships started up its engines. It was already beyond the recommended distance that we'd asked it to be from a seal haul out, but it still managed to disturb a couple of seals off the rocks one day, which was recorded and reported back to them. And their recommendation for mitigation was to ask if it could move further away. And amazingly, lo and behold, the next day, it was indeed further away. So that was really fantastic. You know, we recorded something, we reported it to them, they responded really positively to it, and that was all we could really ask for. It was just really amazing. The other incident that we did have where we managed to avoid a disturbance incident, potentially quite a serious one, was actually at the sort of the finale, I suppose you'd call it, of the summit, when the world leaders were on Carbis Bay Beach having their beach barbecue, and the Red Arrows came over for their aerial display. And at the same time, of ridiculous coincidental timing again, a pod of bottlenose dolphins arrived in the bay at that exact time. They came from sort of the east, came into the bay, followed along the beach towards Hale Estuary, and sort of lurked around there for about half an hour or so. And it was at that time that the display had finished, and the majority of the vessels, security vessels, were heading en masse back to Hale Harbour, which is where the majority of them had been based for this event. So using our real-time reporting system, we called this into Chris and Julian, who passed that information on to Silver Command, and they actually put a message out to their vessels to turn away from the pod of dolphins, as they were at that point on a direct head-on collision course, essentially in the mouth of Hale Estuary. And I was actually up at St Ives surveying at this point and was in contact with them, and just watching through binoculars, suddenly the whole fleet did a complete U-turn away from the dolphins, which was just incredible to see, and actually avoided, you know, having this sort of head-on collision with the dolphin pod, and allowed them the space to move out and around and away from the area later on. So, you know, for such a massive event like this, none of us have ever been involved in something like this before, but we had just the most amazing response from Devon and Cornwall police, who were fantastic throughout. And of course, as I say, the volunteers who helped with all the survey effort and work, and Sue, Abby, as well as Marion and Katie at the Cornwall Seal Group as well, who were really heavily involved in putting together all of our mitigation plans, dispersing the code of conduct to them, and helping to get volunteers on board and involved with doing this. So it was a really fantastic effort, and we've had some really positive things come out of it afterwards, which the main one is that the Rural Affairs Advisory Committee is going to continue running as a legacy project, and it's going to link into other events nationally in the future, including COP26 a few months ago, where elements of the mitigation plan were used there. And we've also implemented it for the International Sail Grand Prix, which took place in Plymouth Sound last summer and will again this summer. And also when the Tour of Britain cycling event came to Cornwall as well last year in September. So we again had the opportunity to provide mitigation advice where potentially helicopters filming the event might be overflying seal haul-out sites, which of course we didn't want to happen. So all in all, a really, you know, amazing opportunity to be involved in such a huge event like this. You know, amazing response from the military and the police who are involved in the security of this event. And crucially, we really only had one pretty minor event of disturbance related to the G7 throughout this whole thing. So big win for everybody on this one, because we just got so much out of it and will continue to going forward into the future. Next up, we have the infamous, very infamous Walrus, Wally.
Dan, can I just interrupt you a sec? Can I just interrupt a sec? Can you make sure that the volume is off on your computer so that we can hear your voice, but then we'll stop any feedback?
Oh, okay.
Unless that's going to throw you, in which case just carry on.
That's okay. I've lowered the volume, so we'll see how we go. So next up, we are tracking the infamous Walrus, who turned up almost exactly a year ago to the day in the southwest of Ireland, and did these movements where he came then across to southwest Wales, spent a couple of months in Tenby, and caused a few issues there, which we'll get on into a moment. Then he moved on, passed down the north coast of Cornwall, and then was next seen hauled out in Spain near La Rochelle. Then after that, he took a trip to Spain before going missing for a week or so, and then turned up in the Isles of Scilly, where chaos sort of ensued, in short. We'll get onto that in just a moment. And then thankfully he moved on in August to the south coast of Ireland, where he did similar things, but regularly moved location rather than staying in the same place as he did in the Isles of Scilly and Tenby, before finally making the big move back to Iceland halfway home. And hopefully he is still doing very well back in his native habitat in Greenland or north of Norway in the Arctic Circle, whichever population he came from. So we did have a lot of issues with this walrus, as I'm sure you're all aware. When he turned up in Tenby, he did start hauling out regularly on the slipway for the lifeboat station, the RNLI lifeboat station. So some deterrent actions were implemented by them to try to remove him in case they needed to launch in an emergency, which fortunately during this time there was no issue with that in delaying response to a real emergency. But some of these deterrents included spraying him with hoses, using air horns, trying to herd him with boards and poles, which could be quite risky because he's pretty huge. Even though he's not fully grown, he's quite massive. We estimated him to being close to a ton in weight and about 3 meters long. The thing is that he habituated quite quickly to these deterrents. So the more they were used, the more he got used to them and essentially ignored them. So this also was an issue. But the most effective method that they found was to gently lower the lifeboat on its winch down the slipway. Because it was much bigger than him, he did give way and went into the water and gave it passage. So there were plans at the time that he actually did leave to try providing him with an alternative haul out, a floating pontoon just a little way offshore from that slipway, and put temporary blockades on the slipway to stop him from getting on there, in the hope that he'd use the alternative instead and just generally be out of harm's way. But as it was, he'd moved on and that wasn't actually implemented. But we did, of course, when he came back to the Scilly, at the Isles of Scilly. So the key thing was in all of these cases to get public messaging out immediately regarding disturbance and safety, as people, of course, were hugely curious about him and wanted to get close as well, which is, you know, just a little bit crazy given how big he is. And a lot of people were going out in tiny dinghies and kayaks and paddle boards just a few meters away from him. And thankfully, he never showed any aggression. But you can only imagine what headlines there might have been if he'd been woken up upset because someone was getting up really close just to get some photos or even selfies. People were doing this, trying to get up close to get selfies with him. And if he'd taken offense to that and dived in and taken them out on the way into the water, you know, things could have turned out incredibly differently. And that was our worry in all of this. But thankfully, as I say, he never once showed any form of aggression. He was just a very unusual animal, perhaps in some ways a bit misunderstood. But we did need to manage both his behaviour and that of the people on a daily basis when he was at the Isles of Scilly. One of my team, Lizzie Larbalestiou, who's my assistant coordinator, spent 3 weeks out there implementing some of the measures to try and protect him. And this followed on from a quite urgent meeting that we had with local authorities, statutory bodies such as DEFRA and the MMO and Natural England, ourselves, Sue, Abby, Tamara at the Cornish Seal Sanctuary as well, to come up with a proper management plan for this animal, because we of course had no idea how long he was going to stay there for. None of us have dealt with a walrus like this before, who at this point was only hauling out on boats and causing damage to vessels at this point. The last time that we knew he hauled out on land was a couple of days after he arrived at St Mary's. At the Isles of Scilly, and hauled out on some rocks at the island of St Martin's. And that was the last time he ever hauled out on a non-man-made object. Everything else has either been a pontoon or a boat. So we had a lot of stakeholder engagement. The Isles of Scilly Wildlife Trust were really fantastic as well in helping us actually on the ground as well over there. And as say, Lizzie, we sent over in the sort of the aftermath of this to go and do a lot of the management work initially for the animal and for the people as well, to try and just keep everybody safe. So lots of public messaging, We did have some real issues with threats being made against the animal's life as well, and to individuals, including myself, because of the damage that he was causing. And you know, that did make things a lot more difficult to try and deal with, as well as, of course, the public and media attention as well. So there was a lot going on all at the same time, and we were asking for advice from colleagues in Alaska at the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, because they've dealt with walruses before, but we found out that they've never dealt with one that's done these behaviours before, so everything's completely new. You know, we had lots of emergency meetings coming up with ideas for deterrence, like using underwater noise, scented objects from predators like polar bears, which we did actually get from a zoo up country, and you know, just all sorts of other ideas that we threw to the mix to see what might or might not work. But the one thing that did, of course, was providing him with that alternative haul out in the middle of St Mary's Harbour, which he essentially made his home for about 6 weeks. He'd go off foraging for 24 to 48 hours, then he'd come back for 24 to 48 hours to rest, and that mostly became his pattern while he was over there. So, as I say, here's some photos of some of the issues with him hauling out on boats, capsizing dinghies and smaller vessels, hauling out on the Star of Life, which is the medical launch on the Isles of Scilly, which fortunately never actually caused an issue for them either. And there's one of the signs that were put up in the harbour, because we were getting daily yachts visiting from other areas, and they might not have known about him. So we had that on the steps where everybody was coming ashore on St Mary's, so they'd have that advice as they came ashore or as they left to take with them. But here's our pontoon in the red circle out in the middle of St Mary's Harbour. That's where this walrus lived for about 6 weeks on the pontoon that Lizzie and others made for him. And fortunately, it worked really, really well. We actually managed to gather some of his hair off some of the boats that he'd been on previously, and sweat and other things, as you can imagine, and put it on there so it smelled like him, so it became a much more familiar object. And we did manage to direct him to use it on the first day that it was deployed by deterring him with a boat from hauling out on a dinghy, and he quite quickly found the pontoon and used that. Then, of course, he became a tourist attraction because he was in the harbour sat there, and people would go up to him doing the usual, trying to get their selfies and everything. So we had lots of talks with people about the dangers, you know, how they could be risking themselves, but also this animal's welfare. If, you know, a really serious accident did happen, things could have turned out really differently. Thank goodness he then moved on to Ireland, and our colleagues over at Seal Rescue Ireland then dealt with him pretty much on their own. They had very little support over there, but ourselves over here, myself and Sue and Lizzie, were offering quite a lot of support to them with advice from what we've done over here with the public messaging and trying to provide him with alternative haul-outs, getting the public and media on side as well to help with that. So that worked again really quite well for them. It was just a little bit different in their circumstance because he did move location every few days or so and didn't stick around in one place. So there was a sort of a constant cat and mouse bit of a chase game going on with where he was going to turn up next. So here's a few photos from Ireland. He's got a snazzy looking speedboat just there. He was provided an old rib, which you can see in the bottom left photo, as another haul out, and then he found some pontoons to haul out at another location, which was good because it kept him away from damaging other boats and causing issues with the owners again. So all in all, a really amazing experience, not one that I'd really like to repeat, but with climate change, you know, animals are on the move, and we might see more of these wandering walruses turning up in other locations. And indeed, last year there was another one that you might have heard of called Freya, who came via Germany and the Netherlands to Northumberland for the day, and then spent Christmas and New Year up in Shetland. And there's currently another walrus who we're not sure if it's Freya or not at the moment in Sweden as well, which we're just keeping an eye on at the moment as well. So yeah, I guess last year and seemingly this year are the years for wandering walruses, and that's how we managed to manage them and everything around it at that time. So here's the last photo that we really do have of Wally the walrus. He's hauled out on the end of a jetty in a harbour in Iceland. He spent a little while there and moved on. We've not heard of him since, so we are really hoping that he did make it back. But yeah, he probably has a few stories of his own to tell. And finally, just to mention a seal that you may also have heard of, not quite as large scale as Walrus, of course, but this is a seal known as spearmint. She was rescued and rehabilitated at the RSPCA West Hatch Wildlife Centre and released in North Devon last summer. But unfortunately, shortly after she was released, people actually started hand feeding her from the side of boats, and this encouraged her to become almost resident in Alfricombe Harbour through the summer, where she was hauling out up onto the slipway next to the main public car park and the harbour office, and causing no end of issues for the poor harbour master, who had crowds of people, people with boats who wanted to use the slipway, you know, all sorts of things going on. And we had medics down from BDMLR regularly checking on her, keeping people away at a distance and keeping her safe as well. And also on a number of occasions, we did relocate her to other places as well, sometimes actually as on 2 occasions as far away as the border with Cornwall. But within 24 hours on both occasions, she was back in Alfricombe Harbour. So that obviously was not working, and it's not going to be any good for anybody to just keep moving this seal every time she's being too much of a nuisance, essentially. So we took the decision to relocate her to South Devon. She was actually released off a boat, and she spent the next month wandering along the south coast as far east as Lyme Regis in Dorset, and then came all the way back and has pretty much been resident in Plymouth Sound since the end of August. So since she's been in that area, we've been working with a few other local organisations such as Rain Wildlife Rescue Network and Rain Peninsula Beach Care, Athena Wildlife Care and others to try and keep her safer as well there. We've done quite a bit of community outreach because she's again carried on with similar behaviours of hauling out on the busy beaches. People come right up close to her and she really isn't that bothered at all. And also we're still now even trying to stop people from feeding her, because that is the key cause of her habituated behaviour towards people, is that she's been fed and she associates us as a food source at the moment. So that's the real issue here, unfortunately, is that we've really changed her behaviour. And what we've been hoping for through the winter of trying to give her as much space on her own and time on her own as we can is that it will break that habituation behaviour and she'll lose that association with people as a food source. And that's what we've been really trying hard to work on over the last few months, to varying degrees of success. I will be quite honest, you know, some days have been good, some days not so good. But her behaviour as well towards swimmers in the water has been concerning, because she is very, very interactive with people, and we've been offering advice to them as well. But here you can see some of the efforts that we've gone to with putting up signs when she's hauled out to keep people away. That was at Core Sands and King Sands. This is over at Firestone Point in Plymouth. We've been providing advice for encounters at sea using Seal Alliance wording, and also some signage and information on what to do if you have one of these interactive seals come up to you when you're in the water swimming as well. So the current plan is that we are going to keep up with monitoring through to Easter. I think that's going to be our first big test, because that's the first really big holiday of the year. And we're going to try and get as much time covered with volunteers, keeping watch over her during this time. We're going to redouble our efforts getting messaging out publicly as well about how to react and act around her appropriately. And we'll be reassessing, you know, for a potential plan B, plan C, if Easter doesn't work out as we hope it might. So watch this space on this one. It's still very much ongoing. Yeah, just with this one, it generally just is a case of help spread the messaging out to swim groups, paddleboards groups, kayakers, and so on and so forth, because we don't want there to be any accidents and any major issues where people or the seal get hurt, or even dogs that have occasionally chased after her as well on the beach. You know, so it's all about keeping everybody safe, being respectable, but also the key thing, really trying to give as much time for this seal as we can to break out of these habits and hopefully move on. And that's based on previous experience of this as well, with completely wild seals that haven't been through rehab. They do gradually grow out of it. It is just a matter of time and a lot of patience, but we really need to keep up this effort of minimising contact with people as best as we can. Of course, as I've mentioned through this talk, we work with quite a lot of other people and organisations in doing all of the various things that we do. Those are just a few of the more unusual things that we've dealt with in the last year or so. So thank you to everybody that we do work with, and to all of our team who have been involved with not just these, but all of the other incidents that we've dealt with nationally over the last year or so. So I hope I've really kept time on that. That was quite hard to squeeze into the time here today, but I hope that's given you a pretty good overview of what's been going on with these quite amazing animals, but also quite amazing events that have happened in this region in 2021.
Thank you very much, Dan. That's definitely a lot to squeeze into quite a short presentation, so well done. So we're coming to our last talk now. We're back with Sue again, and she's going to tell us all about seals in the national context. So over to you, Sue.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Helen. Okay. Wait a minute. I need to share my screen. That would be a good move. Can you see that, Helen?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, lovely. Hello, everyone. Gosh, what an inspiring talk by both Gareth and Dan. Hugely grateful about that. Thank you so much. Yeah, making such a difference for individual animals, but also developing strategies that can be used by others and empowering others to do it is fundamental, really. Okay, so final talk is a bit of a whiz round on legislative stuff, and to try and show that once the evidence starts being gathered, like we've been gathering for years, then people start noticing and people start wanting that data, which is really great. So in 2021, by the end of the year, all the data that we collect was starting to feed into all these different statutory agencies or national or international NGOs. So seals are being given a voice in all these forums now, whereas in the past they were less so. So we're delighted about it, and it's a fantastic validation for all our volunteers and all the hard work that they spend. I mean, today the sun is shining, you know, but they're out there in all weathers all year round when it's freezing cold, pouring with rain, blowing an absolute hoolie. They're wet through to their underwear. All of that becomes worthwhile when you realise you can make a difference at these sorts of levels. So all these organisations benefit from our data, and hopefully that will just get more and more. We've been asked a question on the chat about how you get paid for this sort of work. Well, it's a challenge to constantly run a charity and get money in. However, we've become a bit more self-resourceful. So we now do have an online shop. We have a personal and wild seal supporter and adoption scheme, so people can adopt a seal and get quarterly updates about their seal and all the other seals and loads of other stuff in an exclusive newsletter. But we also use donations, so we're using 3 ways to try and become self-sufficient financially for our core team of rangers, and then we just need grants in order to get additional marine rangers to do additional work when we choose to do it. So, law changes in 2021. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm so excited and so happy about this still. But in March 2021, the Conservation of Seals Act was finally amended to make shooting an offence in the UK. It's always been an offence to injure and take, but through the Netsman's defence, there was a loophole that enabled seals to be shot. That Netsman's defence has gone, and now it is illegal to shoot, full stop. That's great. Can't believe I'm saying that. Okay, in November 2021, another important piece of legislation was put through by DEFRA, and it's a notification that all wild catcher fisheries now have a legal requirement to report incidental bycatch of marine mammals within 48 hours of the end of the trip to the MMO. So now it is a legal requirement to report bycatch. The tiny issue with this, as well as really with the shooting one, is, you know, where's the validation, where's the enforcement, where's the evidence to enforce it? And I have to say, the only way that these are going to become effective is if they get validated and enforced properly. The good news is that we have a huge volunteer network around the southwest and actually around the UK, because there are lots of organisations like us now around the UK who are eyes and ears on the water, who can report stuff, which is great. Cornwall Wildlife Trust Marine Strandings Network, case in point, you know, if there's a dead seal and it's suspicious, then we can get a post-mortem done, blah blah blah. Great. The bycatch one, reporting of that, there is a testing, and I'm delighted to say that Cornwall Fisheries, particularly in Mevagissey, are trialling remote vessel monitoring. So they have cameras on board the boats. When they're hauling the nets, the cameras come on, and if there's any incidental bycatch, then it's evident in the video. So there are ways of doing the validation and enforcement in order to encourage this to be effective. But in 2021, the Seal Alliance really focused its efforts on law change to make seal disturbance an offence. So the Seal Alliance was set up by Andy Ottaway from the Seal Protection Action Group. He was the catalyst that encouraged me to get on board, and then to try and encourage all these other seal groups around the UK to get on board. So well done, Andy Ottaway, for bringing us all together. It's a fundamental change, and it's made a big difference. So this started really with the Seal Alliance signs and leaflets that you've already seen, but in June we hosted 2 separate visits from VIPs. The Environment Minister George Eustace on the left, and Rebecca Powell, who is the Parliamentary Under Secretary for the Environment, came in separate visits, and we had 3 asks of them. Amend the Conservation of Seals Act to include disturbance, to make sure that seals were included in the legislative review they were already undertaking for marine stuff, and to review the SSSI review process, because if we wanted to add seals to a SSSI, Natural England had been trying to do it and discovered they needed to redesignate the whole site, because the review process didn't allow you to add a species if you had evidence to do so. So they were looking at reviewing that process. Okay, so to work on the changes then, we started an political awareness campaign. So on the left-hand side, we had a parliamentary petition that, to be honest, didn't get masses of signatures. It got 26,000 signatures, which we were well chuffed about. But the key thing that was brilliant about this is we got signatures in every single UK constituency. So there are no grey constituencies on there with no signatories. There are loads of yellow ones, and there are some really hot spots as well, mostly where Seal Alliance members are, to be fair. So that raised public awareness about the seal disturbance issue and demonstrated support across the UK. And then the early day motion is a way of raising MP awareness of the issue. And as you can see, we got 25 MPs signed up to this. However, it turns out that most MPs think early day motions are a waste of money because people abuse the system and they don't sign them by principle. However, Mary Tester from the Thames Seal Watch wrote to every single MP about this early day motion, and a lot of them said they support it even though they don't sign EDMs. So we've done public awareness, MP awareness. The next step was to write an open letter to make seal disturbance illegal, which we wrote to Boris Johnson in early February, late January, I think, this year. And this was the culmination of all our campaign work in 2021. And we're delighted to say it got signed by 30 plus organisations, including Chris Packham and Dr. Ben Gorod as individuals, including wildlife trusts, including all the Seal Alliance members, but also including other organisations such as the Tara Seal Research, Cornish Seal Sanctuary, that was seal related, and then also some non-specific seal related organisations such as, thank you Adam Grogan, the RSPCA, thanks to Marine Conservation Society, thank you for that, and also Whale and Dolphin Conservation and Wild Justice. So a range of organisations signed that. We got good take up. We did a press release. You can read all of this if you're ever interested. We did a press release and sent it out. And the press release went with the open letter, with the PPP report, with a link to footage of seal disturbance and footage of relaxed seals, and with a few other references. So we sent the open letter out with the report, which I've already talked you through. But we also sent an old report that we had from 2019 Seal Alliance that showed that disturbance was an issue all the way around the UK, not just in Cornwall. So the systematic research had been done in Cornwall, but it showed it was an issue everywhere. And we also sent another document, which was a wildlife and countryside link document that was done independently by them, which is fantastic. We're now well joined up with them, which is great. But basically it showed that there was an economic argument for protecting seals. Yay! Because we knew that there was an environmental argument. We know that seals and surveying seals and being out in the marine environment helps social, mental health mental health and well-being. So there was a social benefit. But now there was a written report demonstrating that there was an economic benefit. Because people might want to go to the sea to see a dolphin, they leave happy having seen a seal, because seals are reliable and predictable in where they will be when. So if you want to set up a business, you can rely on seals, you can't rely on dolphins. And this demonstrated there was an economic argument for protecting seals. Great. Almost at the same time as well, and probably as a result of the wildlife review that we talked to George Eustace and Rebecca Powell about, the JNCC had their 7th quinquennial review, 5-yearly review. And in that JNCC quinquennial review that went out to public consultation, they have suggested that native grey and common seals, vagrant seal species be added to the Wildlife and Countryside Act. They've also recommended that the walrus remain. So how anomalous is that? The walrus had full protection under the Wildlife and Countryside Act, but our native species and our other vagrant species didn't. So there is now a suggestion that's gone through to consultation. We might hear about in April that these other species get added, in which case it will be illegal to disturb a seal. I'm so happy. So we have to say a massive thanks to Mary Tester, who is on the right here from Thames Seal Watch. She was inspired by the death of Freddie Mercury, the seal on the Thames. He was a seal that got attacked by a dog who'd seen the seal there the day before and not attacked it because a member of the public had intervened. And on the second day, he ran for the seal and mauled it so badly that the seal had to be euthanized. Mary was shocked by this, but she had a history of working in marine mammal centres in America and California. So she decided to do something about it, and she got the political campaign off with the parliamentary petition, the DDM, in which case then she joined the Seal Alliance and we all worked together on it. And this is the MP, Tracy Crouch, who read a 10-minute rule bill called the Seal Protection Bill on the 6th of February in Parliament. Fantastic progress in a very short space of time. I have the video in the presentation, but I'm not going to play it, of Tracy Crouch reading out the reading out the 10-minute rule bill. But you can read it if you wish to. Lots of MPs supported the reading of the bill. I got a thank you because I drafted the bill and Tracy then edited it for herself, so that's quite unusual. And then this is, I don't know if you know, but the Houses of Parliament have minutes produced by Hansard, and it's a book every single day. And this is the Seal Protection Bill in the book that Tracy sent me a copy of. So the open letter got quite a lot of coverage, some quite high profile coverage, and we'd also got some high profile coverage before that because of the parliamentary petition in the EDM. So fantastic that it was covered by Megan on Winter Watch. Then we had Country File Visit, which I mentioned in my first talk, to talk about the issue of seal disturbance. And what was really interesting was Ellie's response to the disturbance. What if a seal looks at you, then that's potentially disturbance. And you know, it was great to be able to have that realization and that understanding that even somebody who cares about marine wildlife, who cares about this issue, doesn't really understand the implications of it. So a seal fee, taking a photo of a seal, whether you're on land or underwater, taking a photo of yourself with a seal isn't an ideal scenario at all. We want people to not be up close and personal with these animals. If a seal is looking at you and it's aware of your presence, it is no longer resting. It's probably stopped digesting its food. It does have a raised heart rate. It does have a raised breathing rate. And if it carries on, it will have a stress hormone release, which has other metabolic implications, as you know yourself. And you also know that individual stress responses are not a problem. However, chronic stress is a problem for humans. And I have personal experience of that with myself and my family. You will have experiences yourself. So it was great to get that kind of understanding about the myths and misconceptions around disturbance. We also had input in the Guardian Observer, which was great, thanks to Rachel Stevenson, who was a great journalist. But we've also started working with other publications. So the SUP Mag did a fantastic one, 2, 3, 4, 5-page article about seals and seal disturbance and how to watch seals well, really focusing on the positives. We also contacted, British Canoeing contacted us and have been fantastic, and we're going to work with them in partnership going forward. We also featured on BBC News for drones when there was a drone disturbance incident, and that had a fantastic response. I didn't know that the Civil Aviation Authority have a drone and model aircraft code, but I do now. And it was all because these two publications took on the drone story. This was, Drone DJ, and this Drone DJ wrote one, and the other one was Tech Radar. The best one was Tech Radar, which is this one. Tech Radar's article has all the links you need. It has the link to the CAA drone code. It has what to do if you've just bought yourself a drone and you want to be responsible. It has a section on the laws and the drones. It's just fantastic. So really keen to work with Tech Radar going forward. So we did that. And then also, because we try to provide evidence of disturbance incidents, there was actually quite a serious disturbance incident in the SSSI where it's an offence by a fisher. And because we had concrete evidence of that, Cornwall Inshore and Fishery Conservation Authority were prepared to do notifications, and they've done these 2 signs for 2 particular SSSIs where fishers have been reported disturbing seals. So this is flagging up the issue, but from a statutory agency point of view. So it's another great engagement. I'm going to stop there because there's plenty for you to have taken on board. Basically, massive political campaign through 2021 into 2022. And it just shows that if you can mobilise enough people, you can start to make a difference. We really need to work together. Working in isolation won't do it. It's no good me working on my own. We've had some great projects, as you just heard from Dan, about us working together. If you work as an inspiration for other people, then you get people such as Gareth on board, and he just mobilises a whole new set of people. You don't need to keep control of it. You just need to provide the resources to empower other people to take stuff on. We can only succeed if we work together. And we're a very powerful force for marine conservation when we work together. I just wanted to finish by saying that I've got a few things that I think will be the biggest threats to our marine environment going forward. I think blue blindness, not understanding anything about the sea, is the biggest threat to our planet. Being in denial, we've had a lot of climate change deniers. What about marine impacts deniers? You know, we get half of our oxygen from the sea, so we mess with it at our own peril. We won't be able to breathe if we're not careful. Apathy, thinking we can't make a difference, not wanting to be bothered, and myths and misconceptions. And I think I've illustrated we've got some of those surrounding disturbance. And our biggest mistake, so those are our biggest threats: blue blindness, denial, apathy, myths and misconceptions. Our biggest mistake will be to prioritise people, us, ourselves over nature, because the food that we eat comes from pollinators, the water that we drink comes from rain, which is governed by oceans, and our health and well-being is, you know, benefits so hugely from nature. And what's the other one? Social, economic. We have an economic benefit from protecting seals as ecosystem regulators and recycling nutrients. They'll help. So thriving seals means thriving fisheries and thriving economies. So it's a triple bottom line. We need to make this happen. We need to galvanise everyone to make a big difference in marine conservation if we're going to survive as a species ourselves. Enough already.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you so much to our other speakers, Gareth and Dan, as well. And thank you to everybody else for coming and for all your fantastic questions. So Sue's been answering a few of them in the chat already, but we've got a couple more. If we've got time, Sue, to ask a couple more, if that's all right.
Yeah, I've actually got one that I'd quite like to respond to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Have time to, and it was have you done some research before and after engagement? Have you been able to research the impacts of your engagement? And the answer is no. We would like to do that better. Seal fees, I wanted to respond a bit about seal fees and just reiterate that, you know, no matter where you are, seal fees are a bad thing to take a selfie with a seal. However, there was a really interesting one about seals approaching people. So when is seal interaction disturbance and when is it not? It's key, isn't it? When is cetacean disturbance and not? Well, cetacean disturbance, if a cetacean comes and bow rides on a boat with you, that is not disturbance. But the minute the cetacean leaves and changes direction and you change course to follow it, that's when it becomes disturbance. Seal disturbance, if a seal approaches you on your own terms and you're actually not near a haul out, so you haven't pulled it off a haul out, if a seal approaches you and you weren't expecting to see it in the wild, that's not disturbance. However, if you put your hand out towards it, that's probably disturbance. If you touch it, it's probably disturbance. And if you try to make it stay with you or interact with it in any way, that's probably disturbance. However, if the seal interacts with you, then that's a seal causing human disturbance, isn't it? Messing with a human. And we've had a few of those, as you can see from Dan's talk. So yeah, it's a complicated issue. I wish I could give you a black and a white, and I can't. It's a grey area about seal disturbance.
Thank you. There was another follow-up point as well, just after that, Annette's point about swimming and snorkeling with seals. Is there any evidence of acclimatization to human activities at popular tourist locations particularly?
So I suspect if you get particular seals in the summer at a particular site and there are divers there regularly, then they probably get used to the divers being there and less threatened. But those seals don't stay there. They go somewhere else. And, you know, making seals trust humans is not a good thing for seals.
Great, thank you. And Alessandra has asked, are there any projects or trials with Cornish fisheries to reduce bycatch?
So yes, to reduce bycatch, actually the answer is probably no then in that case. There are trials nationally with the Clean Catch UK. If you've never heard of Clean Catch UK, look them up. Their website's fabulous. Their mitigation hub is fabulous. There are some trials going ahead run by the MMO in order to reduce bycatch. Some of them are obviously things like the banana pinger that was developed in Cornwall by the Cornwall Wildlife Trust and Chelonia, but also passive acoustic reflectors. So they make no noise, but they are visible then to cetaceans. So that's another thing that's being trialled. But Clean Catch UK is your one-stop shop for that sort of stuff.
So they're more aimed at cetaceans, I guess. Is there anything more focused at seals or not really?
There will be. There is something called the startle response acoustic deterrent that's been trialled, and actually through our work with the Global Ghost Gear Initiative is being trialled in America, although it's a Sea Mammal Research Unit project. But at the moment, because of the frequencies of the sound that you have to produce, you have to have a big speaker, and you have to have a big speaker underwater. You can immediately see the issues of the logistics and the technology.
Great, thank you. Poppy's asked, what are your thoughts on seal-based snorkeling companies who take out guided tours?
Oh gosh, that's a toughie, isn't it? So I don't want to scupper anyone's business, and I don't want to stop anyone enjoying activities with seals. We are going to have to revisit our policy about this in the next 12 months for sure. So our policy has always been that we do not encourage companies to have in-water encounters with seals. That has always been our policy. However, there's always been a company on the Scilly who was set up before we were set up, and they managed to practice using best practice very well. The key thing for those companies is to not operate near a seal haul out, because you are asking for trouble, disturbing seals off the haul out to come and engage through curiosity potentially with the operators. So I think we will have to revisit our policy and start working very positively with people who want to set up these operations, to enable them to have the information that they need to practice best practice, to not be near a haul out, to be in the water a certain amount of time, to make sure limbs are kept to themselves, all that kind of stuff, because otherwise we're doing the King Canute and trying to stop a tide that's going to come in. But it's a hard one. It's really hard, you know. It's bad enough when seals are on land. It's potentially manageable at a small number of sites. The minute we start spending time with them in the sea, that's another refuge gone. So it is hard, but we're realistic. We need to work with people.
Thanks, Sue. And I think we'll just have one more, which is from Bob. What would be your standout conclusions with reference to the grey seal population in the southwest in 2021? Was it a good year or a bad year?
That's also a very difficult one. As Bob will know, he'll get the usual answer from me, which is I genuinely don't know. If you look at the impacts of storms, the storms didn't hit this year when the white-coat pups were being born. However, the storms hit when they were molted, and therefore the impacts become much less obvious. You know, Storm Arwen certainly had a very nasty response in the East Coast. Our pupping numbers were about the same as they were the year before, but as we realistically have no idea about the other three factors to do with population, immigration, deaths and emigration, understanding what's going on with the population is stupidly complicated. I'd say we're doing okay, but I don't really have any evidence to support it, if I'm honest and being realistic. We do seem to have had some changes since COVID. We've had sites being lost, we've had sites being gained, we've had some recolonisation of sites on the south coast potentially, but against what baseline? The baselines only go back to the 1960s at a time when seals were heavily persecuted. They're not realistic baselines, they don't go back far enough. So I genuinely don't know. I know people don't believe me, but I genuinely don't know.
Oh, thank you so much, Sue, and thanks again to all of our other speakers and for everybody else for attending. Yeah, if you missed any of this, then you can catch it up on the Southwest Marine Ecosystems YouTube channel. And just a reminder again that tomorrow Plymouth University are hosting a webinar on fisheries, and on Friday the Marine Biological Association are hosting a webinar on marine and coastal birds. So if there's no more questions, we'll leave it at that and just say another thank you. I'll give you a round of applause to Sue and Gareth and Dan. Thank you very much, everyone.
And thank you very much for hosting us. Wow, well done. Chuffed to bits with that. Thank you, Claire Lewis. I can see you, and John.
Claire, nice to see your face.
Thank you to everyone who's joined us. You know, we can't do this without you. So yeah, I'm delighted you want to know more. I put a link to the Google Drive if you're still on, with masses and masses of resources. So thanks for making me think about that, Helen.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Dan.
Bye, Gareth. Thank you very much, Gareth.
That's okay. Bye-bye. Bye.